Go ahead.
All right, good evening. Call the meeting to order at 6:01. Ask if you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. All right. Would you now
briefly, under 3 minutes, of a conversation that I had recently with a PTO board member. Is that okay?
Sure.
So, I was telling her about, we were talking about gun policy, the current gun policy at the school, and then a House bill that's up before the legislature now. So to just quickly recap, the current gun policy, as many of you know, according to state legislature, is schools can set the policy for their staff and students, but they cannot regulate the general public. In New Hampshire, the general public is allowed to carry concealed or open carry in a public school, in the school and on school grounds. That is not restricted, and the school cannot restrict it. There is, however, a bill currently before our state legislature, House Bill 564, that would change that. Schools would still be able to set their own policy. They could authorize one of their staff members to carry a firearm if they wanted. But the general public would no longer be allowed to carry into the school or on school property. They could keep a gun in their glove compartment if they're dropping off a child or picking them up, but they could not bring the gun onto school property. So we talked about that. I mentioned how actually most police chiefs actually like the new policy because in case they responded to a school shooting, they would already know ahead of time which staff have been authorized if the school chooses which staff have been authorized to carry. They could identify them. Whereas if the general public is there and general public starts pulling out guns, they don't know who the shooter is. So school, town policemen tend to prefer that. What came up in the conversation is not surprising. What comes up in so many conversations I have with parents is that the majority are not aware of what the current policy is. Many of them are shocked to hear that the general public is allowed to carry in school. They don't know it. So my conversation with her was, is there a way that the PTO, because this legislation is coming up right now, and it's a critical time if people want it passed or don't want it passed, pro or con, now is the critical time to speak up. Is there a way for the PTO to publicize this among parents? And her response, and I'll give this to you, you can see who the person was. Her response was, I was finally able to brief and poll most of our PTO board members about your request. Although the consensus of those I spoke with was in favor of the message you're trying to get out to parents, they do not feel the communication should be sent from the PTO. They feel that factual message should be delivered and fielded by the school board and administration. So this is my ask to the school board, and I don't expect an answer tonight. But I would ask you, is there a way to make parents aware of the current policy and the current legislation that's passing, that's up in front of the legislature, if they want to have input on it? Because this is, like I said, a critical time. It's passed the House, it has not passed the Senate yet. And even if it does pass the Senate, my guess is there's a good chance it will be vetoed by the governor. So if parents want to express their feelings, it's a critical time. But again, I'm just never cease to be amazed that parents and another school board, another PTO board member I was talking to at Tricky Tray also said she was shocked to hear that. She had no idea the public could carry in the school. So that's my request to you. And I would be happy to come back to a future meeting if you've had time to discuss it and talk about it. But like I said, it's a critical time now within the next few weeks. Okay? Any questions before I leave? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you
much.
for the opportunity to speak, and I look forward to hearing back.
If you wanted to drop those off, you could.
Oh, yes, who do I get them to? Okay, so this is the email, and this is the copy of the House Bill 564. Great, thank you. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, we will move on to agenda review, and the first thing I would like to do is add Concord High School reports between A and B. If that is okay.
Sure.
Everybody okay with that? What else do we have?
We have construction workshops that we need to discuss. I just want to review your meeting schedule for next year. We need to talk about the June 19th meeting, maybe conflict on that evening.
How about one at a time here? Do you want to?
Yeah.
Would you like any informational items? Because it's not all
Let's see.
recommended.
Not all action needs to be taken, so that makes sense. Information will be fine.
None of them need action.
Not official action, so that would be fine.
Okay.
And the only other thing is we have multiple consent items. I haven't even counted all of them. But
Okay.
we had some new bids come in and new end of year requests.
Okay. So why don't we do E as informational items
Okay.
and F as consent? Or no?
We already have
You already
consent?
have consent.
Yeah, it's
items.
just way more than 2 at this point.
So like
Multiple.
5. So that's something
Yeah.
more.
I would say it's probably 6 or so. And then we do have a need for non-public under A and C.
Anything else any board members would like to add to the agenda or change? No? Okay. So next up, we have Concord High School.
Okay, so the presentation this month, there wasn't a lot going on in April, so it's kind of a combination between May and April. So,
You guys don't have to stand. If you want to stand, you can, or you can just hang out, whatever works for you.
all right.
So a few weeks ago in April, Ms. Sargent hosted an open mic night at Concord High School known as the Coffee House. This event allowed anyone at Concord High School to perform their singing, playing, and poetic talents. And it was not a competition, which allowed many people to do this much easily without the tenseness of a competition. Many students came to watch and to get a nice cup of coffee out of us. Who doesn't like a good cup of coffee? Remember night, right?
Next was the Hawaiian dance. 2 Fridays ago, the junior class hosted the last dance of the school year. It was themed a Hawaiian dance, so everyone put on their leis and their Hawaiian shirts and went to dance and sing.
It was a chilly night too, right?
Yes,
Very
chilly.
For the last few months, the CHS Drama Club have worked extremely hard to bring to life their own rendition of the Addams Family. The play is based on the Charles Addams cartoons from the New Yorker magazine. Performances were on May 9th, the 10th, and the 11th.
So last month in April, the juniors had the school-wide SATs. It was the first year that we did the computerized testing, and there was actually a lot of negative comments on the computerized, and since I took it, I specifically did not like the computerized testing, and there was a lot of comments that said for people who took the SATs before but written, their scores decreased by like 100 or 200 points. So not a lot of people liked the computerized testing.
On May 11th, the Be the Change Club hosted this year's Youth Leadership Summit. They had special guests from Anthony Valentine, author of Culture magazine, to speak at the event. This event aims to promote the leadership skills of each individual, but also to make all those who attend more inclusive and aware of others.
Next is the 8th grade transition night. So this happened last night. This was encouraged that all 8th grade students who are going to be upcoming freshmen to go to this 8th grade transition night to help like parents ask questions with their parents or just the students and ask questions or like have any conversations with people who go to Concord High. And then also next week is the tours for the Runlet kids. There's 3 days where students will be giving tours just like you guys did in December. Yeah. Okay. So last time we were here, you guys asked a few questions on like the whole transitioning to Concord High for like Deerfielders. So we came up with like a few slides that say things about what students might be questioning. So I asked a few of the 8th graders that I know, and like some of the questions that they had about coming to Concord High, and that I knew I had when I was going to Concord High, and David as well.
I had many questions going into Concord High.
So one of the big questions was like how much bigger was it than Deerfield? Because knowing Deerfield, like a small school, and Concord is huge. Concord, I know in every class is like 500 kids, and that's around how much is in this entire school. But the building size doesn't really matter. Once you get in there, it seems just like Deerfield. Like you know your way around after a few weeks, and it's perfect.
There's also a fear of being left out and not knowing anyone. And, you come into a new school with a bunch of new kids, and, it seems intimidating that you've got all these new kids you've never seen before. But I can tell you, from my experience, and from the current freshmen at Concord High, they blended in pretty well with the Concord students within the first 2 weeks of the school year.
Another concern from the students is like the different classes. Like they don't know what classes to take, and they don't they're too hard or not. But I would suggest looking at like the course schedule, not schedules, the course options, and finding out any classes you can take and like planning ahead too, so you can plan your entire schedule. You only have 8 credits each year you can take, which is really not a lot because there's so many different classes you can take, and
there's a lot of opportunity at Concord High School.
Advice to freshmen coming up from Deerfield is just get involved in different things, clubs, sports over the summer. A lot of clubs are getting together and hosting things over the summer, and sports, they start up in the end of June, like some sports are already starting that are in the winter.
I start my summer training for cross country right after final exams, and this is a great opportunity to meet the new freshmen as well.
Mm-hmm.
We always encourage the freshmen to come to that.
Yeah. And all the upperclassmen on the teams and clubs are always welcome and are helping all the freshmen. Another piece of advice is to branch out. So you don't have to be scared to talk to someone from Concord or talk to anyone else who's coming to Concord. You don't have to just stay with all the Deerfielders, because a lot of my friends are also Concord people, but I still am really close to some of the Deerfield kids. So.
Me too. Another one is manage time wisely. In high school, you gotta manage your time with all your classes and know what to do, keep a planner. And I know in Deerfield, it was when I was here, you got planners automatically. That's another good resource to keep, is to keep a planner where you write all your homework to do, when you have tests, and I always keep track of sporting events on there too.
The last one, everyone's going to be nervous. I was nervous. I was actually super nervous, but once you get there, it's perfectly fine. You have the week of transitioning, and then it feels like you belong already.
Yeah, it really does. I knew my way around the school like that after a couple weeks at the school.
Another big thing is it's not just the Deerfield kids transitioning to Concord High, it's all other schools being integrated. I don't know exactly what schools, but I remember.
There's one called Shaker.
Yeah, they're all from.
They come.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're not all just from Runlet, so. So Concord High compared to Deerfield, I felt like it was more independent. You were more on your own to do things. There wasn't always a teacher to help you with something, constantly, and you more take on responsibility. There's a lot more. You have to be more responsible.
Yeah, you have to live up to your choices.
Important thing, I don't know what grading competency you guys have.
It
is 1-4, okay. I just wanted to mention that just in case. But
yeah, it's like that.
yeah.
and then start thinking about your future beyond high school.
Yeah, that comes really fast. Like, so I didn't think that it would come super fast. I really need to plan out what I was going to do. But then now this year, when I'm a junior, it's really hitting me that I need to start thinking fast.
And I'm baffled. I'm already almost halfway through my high school career. I remember my last day here at Deerfield pretty clearly.
Any questions or comments?
The planner you mentioned. Just curious how Concord works in terms of, do you find that most teachers use some sort of a website? Is there a Google Classroom or something like
Yeah,
that?
there's Google Classroom.
So if a student doesn't have a planner or whatever, can you generally find the homework online somewhere?
And you can always email your teachers. All our teachers normally are really good at responding to emails from students.
Okay.
And the same goes for like, if you miss class, there's also, when you go on Google Classroom, you email your teacher. The teachers are expecting you to email them, not them to email you saying like, this is what you missed or whatever.
Yes.
Can I ask you what you think it was about the SAT that you didn't like? What was the difference between the written and the computerized?
So I took the ACT written before, and I liked that, but that's also a different test. The SAT, so for math, on the computer I did not like at all, because I'm someone who likes to write down everything. I'm more towards the written part of things. And also for the math, you had to like click numbers, and I usually finish the test, but I didn't get to like a few of the last questions, so that brought down my score a little bit. And then reading, it just got annoying reading it on the computer. I would have liked it on paper better.
Where you had scratch paper though, you could have written down math problems if you had wanted to. There was okay.
Yeah, and a lot of so the person that was in my room, like some of the teachers didn't really know what to do, so it was also confusing because they didn't know what buttons to press or on the computer, and they weren't used to it. And then some kids couldn't take it because their programs on their computers weren't working for them to take it, so they were not allowed to take the SAT.
So did the entire junior class take it all at once?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Were you a SAS kid? Did you have to do the tests on the computer when you were here in 8th grade, like the New Hampshire assessment? Or?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, I didn't know if it was, because it's only a couple of years.
It wasn't SAS, but yeah,
It was
SBAC.
SBAC, yeah, that's
So you did SBAC on the computer
Yeah.
though? Were you
That one was fine. I just
Okay.
feel like the longer it got, it became harder. I don't know, I was sitting there for 5 hours
Yeah.
looking at a computer
Yeah,
screen.
it's
I
tough
always
on the
like,
eyes.
it's tough on my eyes.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I get cranky when I sit still for 5 hours.
Yeah.
Well, right, because the SBAC, you would have been there for maybe 40 minutes, 60
Yeah.
minutes, taking a break if you needed to, and then the next day you take the next part of the
Yeah.
test, so it's not a continuous block of time. Interesting. Good feedback.
Do you know if I know you said the Runlet kids are coming next week or something. Is that during the school day, or are they coming after? Or?
They go during the school day. So I know I'm in NHS, so some of the kids from NHS will give the tours to the Runlet students like during the school day. So
It allows like a good opportunity for them to see like when everyday life is at Concord High School.
Is that similar to what we do? You know?
I'm sorry. I was zoning out on the SAT and 5 hours on the computer.
Is the tour similar in structure to what the DFL kids do?
When they go there,
Yeah.
I believe so.
Yeah,
I can't remember. Did we
They
have
go during the
lunch
day.
with the student? Did we have lunch with the student?
No.
No?
No, not that I remember.
Yeah, because that's something that the Runlet kids do, and I was just wondering why it's different for Deerfielders. And if it's just because we go in December, and
Yeah, we had kind of talked around this last time, like we should structure our tours later in the year. Because December and May is a huge difference.
Yeah, it's a big.
There's a part of me that almost wonders why our kids aren't touring with the Runlet kids
yeah,
as
that's what
their
I was
class.
thinking. And then maybe they could have like not lunch together, like do
Well,
something.
it's a way to
together.
start the experience. I mean, those are going to be their classmates in 4 years.
Could you guys look into aligning that? That would be useful going
I
forward.
have another question. as well. So you had mentioned that when you go to Concord, obviously it's a more independent study. Do you feel like when you were in 8th grade, there should have been more of a transition to a more independent study to help you prepare for Concord, or do you think that little bit of additional, I don't want to say oversight, it's the wrong word, but I guess that less independent teaching was beneficial all the way up through 8th grade, or do you think a little more independence would have been better to help you prepare?
I remember in some classes that we did have a lot, like teachers were, at the end of 8th grade, teachers started preparing us for like high school.
Yeah.
So they would like have us take our own notes. I remember Mr. Flatt and Miss O'Donnell did it a lot. Like she would just put the notes on the board. She wouldn't really, or no, she'd just say it, and we'd have to write our own notes just listening, because that's kind of like what high school's like. So she wanted us to get used to not reading it directly off the board and copying exactly what she wrote. So.
Do you think that was enough preparation?
I do think it was enough, but like you're gonna have to transition to being more independent at some time, and so I think they did a good job.
What about the? And I apologize if I missed it because I came in late. But what about the quality of? I don't know if quality's not the right word, but as far as note taking and that's, you know, gathering of information, do you feel you had the right skills to? And I apologize, I'm not putting this well, but you know, like you said, Mr. Flatt and Mrs. O'Donnell had you do that, but did they show you how to take notes? Did you learn the right skills for prepping yourselves and making sure you had the right information for? Did you know how to study? Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
That's a taught skill.
Right.
They did prepare us really well for that, and a lot of the note taking in high school, like I feel like some of the teachers just freaked me out a lot. I mean, I kind of freaked out over tiny things, but the note taking in high school really isn't a lot different. Some teachers do the whole like format, and you just fill in a few words, and others don't. They just talk, and you have to take your own notes. Like it's different from each class, but I do think Deerfield did a really good job with helping us transition to that way.
I mean, you're in your 3rd year, and I know that there's study halls built in. Do you always have a study hall on your schedule, or sometimes you don't?
No. Last quarter I did not have a open or study hall.
Right.
So
It all depends on how many credits you sign up for. If you have 7 credits, say you sign up for that, you'd have 1 study or open for each quarter throughout the year.
you only earn the open, which means that you can, so studies, you sit in a classroom with a teacher there, and you have the chance to go to the library if you want a quieter environment. Usually studies are very quiet. An open you earn, I think now it's sophomore year or at the end of the freshman year. Where if you have grades above an 80, you are allowed to have the open privilege, which means that you are either allowed in the cafeteria or the library, but like no wandering halls or anything like that. And then there's senior privilege where you to leave campus during that open period.
Cool. Thank you. You guys are welcome to hang out with us if you'd like, or if there are any other questions. All right. 2 things that I obviously the aligning the tours I think would be super useful for us. I also think sports summer schedules, there's a lot of sports and teams and clubs that start basically in June up there, and it'd be really nice for our communication to have that on the calendar or on our website so that 8th grade parents knew there's soccer and hockey or in Henniker, and there's cross country in Concord or whatever it is. So we should help facilitate that kind of a transition.
Does that information go out to Concord parents, of Runlet parents, let's say? Or is it more of like a not until September thing?
The only way I knew was I called, my son plays soccer, so I called the soccer coach and said, hey, what should he plan on doing for soccer? And he said, oh, we do this, there's this whole pickup that starts in June and goes right up to the tryouts kind of thing. But it really wasn't, I think because it's not an official function of the school. Like the clubs kind of run it independently, or the teams run it independently, but it's the teams.
Yeah, there's certain
Like the coaches can't be doing that.
right. There's certain rules that
Off-season.
that they have to follow as far as that. But I mean, the athletic director up there,
They can
let us know what those rules are.
It's not just sports, it's clubs, it's everything else. I mean, there's more than just, it's whatever else is starting, whatever's available to the
I
eighth
can
grade
also
students.
talk to Mr. Mello too, to see if I can get him to talk to one of you guys.
Yeah, is he the athletic director?
Yes.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where it's just communication between the two schools, and more the better.
Okay.
So. Excellent. All right.
Thank you.
Really
Can I have one of
appreciate
those,
you guys doing this.
Thank you very much.
Highlighted, that's
Awesome.
fine.
Thank you.
If you guys want to hang out, you're welcome to hang out with our meeting, or
Hang out for a little while.
it's up to you.
They're about as much fun as a root now.
Oh, come on.
Open wide.
Someone was
So, that does Concord High School. We are now on to CIP discussion. I think we have a proposal in front of us from Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. Did everybody get a chance to take a look at that? To deal with the scope of the CIP and having them do it. My only concern with the proposal is the timeline. They are suggesting to be done by December of this year. I don't know.
Was this initiated by us or by them? Where did this come from?
We
made this.
proposed last time to
You were right.
ask them to do the details on the CIP.
But this document came from the
this
SAU?
came from them.
No, from them.
No.
Okay.
This came from them.
Thank you.
And we did ask, Patty asked to include a deliverable section, so we had a sense of when it would be completed.
Okay.
And the deliverable section has them 8 months out right now.
Right.
Yeah, it seems a little long for what should be 50 hours worth of work.
So my inclination would be, I'm in favor of this as long as the deliverable section changed to something like October
Yeah.
rather than December.
I'd say by October 1st.
I was thinking September 15th, because of chance, honestly, because it still has to get acted upon and moved over to
The planning board.
and that process will take time, and they meet, I think it's just once a month is when they meet, so I mean,
No, they're twice a month.
are they twice a month?
Planning board's got to be twice a month. I don't know.
But have we been in touch with the planning board? Do we have any idea about what the general?
They're doing this for the planning board.
Right.
So
And my point is that they may have a better feel of the timeline. It may be that given the state of all of the boards of our town, it may be that that's a more realistic time. Aren't they in touch with all these people? And so
they're
therefore,
probably all in touch with these people, and they're going to pull all of school board members and others. But there's this contract is specific to our needs.
right.
So
But if the select board isn't going to get their package finalized until next March,
it doesn't matter.
then this is a perfectly fine timeline because we can't really go forward until we have, or the planning board can't, whatever the next step is, it can't happen until everything's all there from all of the boards.
That's true.
So I'm just,
find it to be an extremely long timeline.
yes, I agree, but it may be an accurate timeline, just that we don't have the information. I don't know.
They're driving the entire process at this point because they were contracted by the planning board to write the capital improvement plan.
Right.
Has the planning board contracted them in a similar fashion, or are they still doing
No,
it
it's more extensive. So the planning board contracted them to write the report itself, the plan itself. And then they've gone to each one of the stakeholders, us being one of them, and asked for specifics off of our needs, which, and I think they're going to each one of the boards and doing the exact same thing that they did with us and saying, you guys fill all this out, you guys highlight this, you guys get the details, you get the costs. So we said no. how about you do it?
We'll
And
pay you.
put it together.
But let's say that all of the other boards in town do the same thing and pile it all on this group. Now they're doing the whole thing, and
Which
so
they probably want to do, but
which makes December maybe a reasonable time.
So
I just don't know.
So we would need a motion to either move on this contract as presented or move on this contract with some sort of caveat.
So I would move to approve this contract with a change in the delivery date for October 1st.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion.
Is there language we can use? I like the October 1st date, but I'm almost wanting to put language in there saying, to address your point as well, saying that, based on some sort of language in there saying, we like October 1st, but if this is what fits with everything else, we can go
I think
with that. I just don't know how that would work.
this is a contract between the school board and them to do the school board's portion.
Mm-hmm.
So that timeline can be independent of the other ones. We can say we want ours done, we want it done for October 1st, we want it done first.
Yeah,
All right.
Or whatever it is, because everybody else is doing it on a volunteer basis, and it could be done, that process could drag out. But we can very well take the initiative and say we want it done, and we want it done for October 1st, and this is what we're willing to do. And then at least our site's complete, we can say that our chapter of the CIP is finished.
With that in place, does that mean we can move forward and act on stuff?
Good question. Whether or not we can move forward ahead of that, or while this is in process, or after it is executed. So I think it's a continued discussion for the board to have.
Because
It's nothing until it's complete.
right, but so you get it. I mean, that's been one of the things that we've always discussed with regards to this is getting our section done so that we can start to act on it, and it kind of bolsters the argument that it needs to be done sooner rather than later.
Right. And the argument could be made that even though the specifics are not completed at this point, we kind of highlighted our 7 projects that we want to include. I don't think we have any intention of removing any of those 7 projects from the CIP. They're just going to be ranked according to whatever the matrix is at the time that it's executed. So you could make the argument that we've done it.
I'd like to move an amendment of the motion.
Go right ahead.
I would like to amend Zach's motion to say that I would add a bullet in here somewhere to say that I would that we, in the correct language, we the board would like to view a draft at, let's say, our second meeting in August, partway through this process. I don't know that this looks like it's just, I'll speak to it after if I get a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you. So I think that I would have brought this up earlier, I just noticed it, but this looks like beginning and end, and we don't see it until it's done.
Right.
I would like to get some input partway through once we have something to look at. And I don't know if we would really have much to offer, but I feel like there might be some things that we might notice that are out of line or something that I'm afraid they might not notice if they're not, in the middle of it.
All right.
So I don't know what the right wording would be, but to have something like a
That's
midpoint.
fine.
Okay.
See a working copy or whatever.
Yeah, a working copy in the middle of August.
Yeah.
All right. So we have an amendment to the motion.
A second on the amendment.
You got that, Candy? Okay. So now, is there any more discussion around adding language that would say that we would like to see a draft on the second meeting in August? So all in favor of adding that?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are back on the main motion, which now includes the language of seeing the draft on the second meeting in August and completed October 1st. So any additional discussion there?
Would we be open to some negotiation if they come back and say, well, we can't have it until the first week of September? are we?
Is it appropriate, Patty, for us to name the chair, the person to make that decision?
It's up to the board, you certainly can.
So right now we are voting to approve this contract with the caveat that we would see a draft on the second meeting in August, and the project would be, and our section of the CIP would be completed on October 1st.
If they come back and say we can't do that timeline,
Then we're back, and it's back in front of us at our next meeting in 2 weeks.
okay,
Unless we motion to give Jim the,
leeway.
Does Jim want that?
with great power comes great responsibility, Mr. Chairman.
If you want me to negotiate it, I can do that.
Do we need to move on the initial
We
motion?
need to vote on the approval of the contract with the caveat that we would see a draft on the second meeting in August, and that section 6, the deliverables would say be completed by October 1st, 2019, rather than December 5th.
Do we need to put language in here, so as in adding another amendment, that would make you the chief negotiator?
You can just give it,
Separate motion.
Or that would be a separate motion?
no, you can just, the intent of the board is that I can negotiate.
Okay, great.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I heard you, Candy.
I'm still looking for it, I've got it.
Consent items.
Do we,
Megan, the CIP is the capital improvement plan. It
Yeah,
is,
it's a little confusing.
there's a lot of acronyms. So basically, and I'll say this for the recording too, so the capital improvement plan is a document that the town puts together, we're supposed to do it once every 10 years, that ranks all of the projects across the whole town. And it kind of ranks them against each other, whether it's the school, the police, the fire, or whatever. And it kind of gives an idea of what you want to do and what order you want to do it. So it's been, our town has not had one. We have not regularly done this every 10 years. So it's kind of recreating the wheel. So that's where we're at. And we want to get the wheel recreated sooner than later. All right, consent items.
You have several bids, you can take them up in the order that you would like. You want to start with the storage shed?
Storage barn.
Barn.
Did everyone get a chance to take a look at the proposals on the draft?
Yes.
So we got 3 proposals.
I have a question.
You may start with questions.
There is a sizable difference between 2 from one of them. And then as I looked closer in the language, one of the ones that has a sizable, as a larger quote at the end, the design was not exactly what I think our request was. I think the design came back at 2 floors, whereas our request was a single floor. I don't know whether...
Can you speak to each individual one? Do you know the names of them?
it's okay, I mean, once the bids are open.
Yeah,
Oh, so I
we can
have to be...
talk about
No,
it.
you can
Okay,
talk.
all right.
Yeah.
They're
All right.
public now.
Okay, so then the one from
So we got
Fisher,
one
I think. From
we got one
Fisher,
Solid Roots, we got one from Fisher, and we got one from, starts with a P.
the P one. Okay, so the Solid Roots one was the lowest
Correct.
bid. And I think the design looks like what we were asking for. But then I think the Fisher one was more, but it also sketched out 2 floors. And so, so obviously it's going to be more because it's 2 floors. And so I guess my question is, are we sure that all of the bidders had the same accurate information going into this process, and that we didn't do any sort of misleading or, you know what I'm saying? I don't know if I'm phrasing this right.
Would you like to see the RFP?
I saw that too. So that was just a document that went out to every one of them.
Right.
That was it. And so if there was a misunderstanding, it was from the bidder's side. It was not from our
So,
side.
if I jump in.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you.
You were at the walkthrough.
I was at the walkthrough, so all 3 bidders were at the walkthrough, that we had the same conversation with all of them.
Okay.
The elevations from Fisher are effectively the same. It's a walkout lower level, which is the foundation level, with
Yeah.
a full story above. So those elevations and the elevations from Solid Roots are similar. Variations in, appearance and whatnot, but it's the same elevation. It's a 2-story structure, but it's a walkout basement. built into
Okay.
the grade.
I missed that.
And this is their front elevation
Yeah.
here. I mean, they had multiple garage doors, and they
Right.
did a couple of other things, and they put an eyebrow dormer on it, at least in the elevations, which looks nice, but for a storage building doesn't necessarily serve a function. That's the elevation from Solid Roots,
Okay.
which is similar,
Right.
2-story.
So in the RFP though, it says a single story, and
Well-
so you're saying that is a single story.
A single story with a full walkout basement, which is what was bid
Okay.
by everybody, at
Okay.
least to the extent that I've reviewed everything. I have multiples of that, so there's actually, I'm sorry, I didn't realize there's 2 of those there.
So there was a large price difference between the three.
Yes.
With a single storage building with a full foundation.
Do you have that
So-
printed out by any chance?
Yep, exactly.
Oh, I'm sorry. What do you need to?
Which one?
The cost breakdown.
The scoring?
Cost breakdown. I got it here. It's very teeny.
So I think the first thing to do is just to crash through the cost numbers and
Sure. It's KJ Fisher and Sons, total project cost of $212,235. Paxor Construction, total project cost of $223,380. And Solid Roots Construction, total project cost of $71,000. So there is a major difference between Paxor, KJ Fisher, and Solid Roots. All three got good qualifications and experience scores. Paxor didn't include some of the information on. They scored low on references. I guess they didn't include that. Purchased project. Everybody looked pretty good. And then there's a huge cost difference. So.
I mean, if we look at just at face value, just the project costs, the 2 of the numbers, I don't think we can.
I am not entertaining
Yeah.
a $200,000 project.
No, neither am I. Not for a shed, for lack of a better term. So I think what we need to decide is we need to look at the third number and determine if that's going to give us what we're hunting for. And,
Right.
I mean, we're looking for a storage building. We're looking for a way to clear out egress throughout the building. And it gives us that, which is what we need. So,
Just to reiterate for people who didn't watch the last meeting and do watch this meeting, the purpose of this building is to provide storage space for a lot of materials within the school because there was literally no storage space outside of the school. And the thought of the board was that the first step would be to free up what existing space we are taking with things that are not necessarily used on a regular basis, and are also a safety hazard because they're stored in stairwells and things of the sort. And then we can look at what functional space we add to usable educational space going from there. So it's kind of a first step in dealing with the number of kids that are in the school. So, is there anyone in favor of considering either KJ Fisher or Paxor based on the total project cost? Okay, seeing none, why don't we have a discussion around Solid Roots Construction and the project that they proposed for $71,000. Did everyone get a chance to read through the bid?
yes.
Zach, do you have a chance to highlight a couple of the things you read in it?
I mean, it's exactly what we're looking for. One of the notes is we had talked about, and I think this is potentially where we've seen some of the cost savings. As far as insulated and heating, the way that they have it kind of spelled out is there's a 480 square foot conditioned space on the first floor, the ground level, right? So that's going to be that that lower area. So effectively half of that space is going to be walled off, conditioned, and insulated, and heated. Which we needed heated space primarily for a lot of the stuff that
Gym equipment.
needed to be in a heated space. We have the ability at that point, you know, if we determine down the road that we want to insulate and heat the rest of it, we can. So this is going to be effectively 1,500 square feet of cold storage and 500 square feet of conditioned space. I think that satisfies what we need. We may, down the road, decide that, you know, we want to add a little bit of additional heated conditioned space inside the building, but the rest of that area below grade is still going to stay pretty tempered anyway, so it's going to be a fairly comfortable. So second story is going to be genuine cold storage, at least initially. So that's the one, I guess, I don't want to call it a positive negative, it's just what was spelled out kind of in the plans. Outside of that, it's a box. It has a roof and siding and windows and doors. I mean, it's not a complicated thing.
It looks like the access is side access mainly, or there's an internal staircase too, right?
Based on their elevations, there's an internal staircase from ground level to the second story, and then there was a exterior set of stairs as well. And when you look at the elevations, there's going to be some of that side elevation is going to get sucked up in the grade anyway, so you'll see the slope will kind of follow the stairs up to a certain extent.
Shouldn't that have to all be all concrete then?
I think they'll have to pour concrete up to grade.
Yeah, it'll be depending on.
Yeah, it's not.
Exactly. One of the things that all three of the contractors were discussing was how far back from the parking lot to set the building. The thought is, if you look behind the building, there is the sprinkler house, I guess I'm going to call it, but there's a little red outhouse looking shed.
That's the septic pump house.
I thought Mike said that was a sprinkler. That was the cap for the tanks for the sprinkler system. Okay.
That's what pushes it up. That's where the pump is.
I thought that was underneath the metal cover. So right. Regardless.
Okay.
There's a red structure, looks like an outhouse back there.
Right.
We'll call it the privy. Okay. So, it'd be just to the left of that. There is a tank there, buried there. So obviously clear the tank, so you're probably 25, 30 feet to the left of that outhouse style building. And then there's a set of power lines there. There's some posts that run along the corner of the parking lot. So it would have to be set back far enough to just maintain sufficient setback there. But there's still quite a bit of run up before you get to the slope there. So the building's not going to have to get sunk that deep into the hillside. But it'll be into the encroaching to the hillside a little bit to start.
Is that a functional space for easy access for storage?
Yes, I mean, we can make it work.
Right. And I'm just thinking, like, there's ramps all the way over there.
Yeah.
Like, you come out by the cafeteria and there's a ramp there,
Right.
and then you come across the pavement, and you basically, there's going to be a garage door, so you'll be able to roll right into it.
Yeah, so
Some of the stuff is heavy.
yeah, I mean, I'm thinking like, you know, the chair racks. I mean, there's got to be 10 of them sitting inside this building at any given point. How many of them are really needed? So there's a lot of that stuff that can go out there.
How would you wouldn't be able to get that upstairs though? Is there enough
That would be
room
a-
downstairs for everything
Yeah,
that you wouldn't want to carry up?
Well, if you make that a priority for that space.
Yeah, I mean, 24 by 40 is that's a building. I mean, that's a good sized space. So I mean, there's plenty of room in there for storage. The second story would be utilized differently, but we can also, I mean, down the road, filing stuff. I mean, we could put a cage up there if you wanted to move some files that you need to secure and have, but wanted to restrict access to, you could easily put a cage up there, put some cabinets in it, and then give you a place to locate that stuff. I mean, there's a lot of additional usage we can gain out of that space, and the cost to add the second story is minimal when you're looking at a building like this. It's getting the crews here, and I mean, putting the roof on, you're talking another 8 feet of studs basically to build it, to add that second story, so that adding the second story is minimal cost in the grand scheme of things, so it's crazy not to do it while if you're going to do it, just do it all.
Additional discussion.
Part of me feels like we're rushing into this. I mean, I know that we need storage space. I know that we have too much stuff in this building. Have we, so, I mean, I don't know. So is there flexibility? So I hear your argument for the second story, and I can see why because I don't, in the quote, I'm coming back to this idea, we just asked for a single-story building, and this does not look to me like a single-story building. But I'm moving on from that, that's okay. If we have the second story, and I hear your point that that does increase, it's not a huge increase in cost if we're already building a single-story building. Would that second floor, what kind of flexibility would it have? Would it be possible to make it a classroom? What would it take to go from what we currently have to usable space from an instructional standpoint? Is that a big difference in what we're talking about for cost here? Huge difference. Okay.
There's accessibility issues. There's code for
Fire,
you'd have to sprinkler the whole thing. You'd have
you'd have to bring plumbing in for restrooms.
Okay.
I mean, it's a different structure altogether.
Okay, so it's only going to be limited from the outset to only storage.
The flip side to that is only storage is if we do expand the campus, we are again going to need more space, and it will allow us the ability to, in 10 years, the decision may be made that, okay, we're going to have one person on staff that's going to be doing the groundskeeping, as opposed to groundskeeping and something else, and it's going to give you an ability to store your mowers and your equipment and have a maintenance shop that you may build out eventually that could become a separate exterior maintenance shop.
The maintenance guys could go.
Yeah.
Okay, but we just filled up the first floor with all the chairs.
No, we didn't fill up the first floor with all the chairs. We used part of the first floor for chairs.
Okay. Okay. What about the structural integrity of the hill behind this? Once you start digging into that, and I know I asked this in a previous meeting, and you said that that'll be fine. I trust you, but at some point we're going to have somebody come and either survey or some sort of an engineer come and look at the actual structure to that hillside. I don't want to be digging into the hillside and then, whoops, it starts to slide. How, you were saying a couple of months ago that the whole integrity of that hillside is a little bit debatable because it's full of holes because it's been settling for the last 10 years.
Never said it about the hillside. That was the field.
That was the field, which is different than the hillside. Isn't it supported by the hillside?
And the hillside has done a remarkable job of supporting the field. But where the ledge is buried, and where it's buried in a weird fashion,
It's further back.
It's further back.
I guess I would like to see some, and I'm not questioning your credentials, but I would hope that we would get some sort of an engineering or something if we start digging into this stuff. And what the tank you're talking about, is a fuel tank or is it a septic tank? That's next to the pump that they're calling it privy, though it might be a
when I was discussing with Mike, what Mike explained to me is that is the holding tank for the sprinkler system.
a holding tank, so it's a water tank.
It's a cistern.
Okay, gotcha.
That would make sense. So probably is.
I wasn't going to argue with you.
That's all right. You can argue with me.
This doesn't benefit me at all. So.
So
I guess I just have some. I don't want to rush into this thing, and I agree that we need space. Nobody's going to question that, and I would like to get it done quickly so that we can start thinking about bigger things. But
if we ask for the professional opinion of an engineer in town to look at the structural integrity of the hill.
The other side of that is again, this isn't as far into that hill as
It's not.
as you're thinking.
okay,
It's going to be pretty. It's going to be kind of. I think that the layout is right behind the basketball nets, and there's a flat, and then it swoops.
Yeah,
Okay.
you
It's
probably
24 feet.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, if you're 10 feet off the parking lot,
yeah.
that hill doesn't really start to climb. We paced it out. That hill doesn't really start to roll up until you get to about 60 feet.
Okay, and where is if we go with this? Where is 72,000 coming from? We haven't gotten that far yet, but let's say it's 72,000. We have to pay for it. Where is that going to come from? I don't know. We've discussed that. I guess the other part of this question is, in this rushing into it, it's just maybe me, but we haven't really told anybody in the community that we're going to do this. Maybe there are people who really use that space for something that we don't know about. How much have we talked to the administration about how much we already use that space? Or is that the right spot for it? Or I feel like there's so many steps in planning a building that's permanent that we haven't done yet that I would like to. I don't want to rush into spending $75,000 and then make a mistake. And I know that I don't want to be so cautious that we don't do anything either, so I'm trying to find the middle ground here. But those are some of my concerns about this.
So
I mean, if we're taking it from a trust fund, then we're going to have a hearing at some point. I mean, do we need to actually have an open house and say we're proposing to do this and actually invite people to come see?
we also we're running a surplus at this point where we would have the flexibility within the existing budget to do it.
Okay.
So your first question, the administration sitting right here. So if the administration feels that it is not an appropriate place or that it is not, that it's impacting, do you feel like that space is ever used for anything?
I would say it's not used for nothing. I don't know.
I mean, does recess happen there? You know, recess doesn't happen on the pavement, or does it use the grass, which is right there? And then does it get plowed in the winter, so therefore it's actually open space that's used in the winter when they can't plow the whole playground? Right? I mean, it may be used for a lot of stuff that I don't know, so I guess that's...
How would that, thinking about that too, how would that impact parking?
It's off of the...
Should we take a 10-minute walk back there while there's light and have 5 board members stand out there?
I think we could definitely take a recess for a couple of minutes and go take a look.
Why don't we
Is
take
everybody in favor of taking it? All right.
Sure.
So we are going to recess the meeting at 6:57 for 15 minutes. Let's give ourselves enough time to actually walk back there. Yes, we're going to move on. So anybody wants to join the board, we're going to walk back there.
Field trip.
All right, so the board went out behind the school to see the proposed location for the storage barn. We were in the middle of kind of an initial discussion around the proposal. Mr. Oxnard, I think you had additional questions.
Yeah, I guess I would like to make the public aware. I mean, we're also at the same time having this conversation about potentially adding onto the building, which is going to be a much larger addition, a much larger discussion. And I want to make sure that if we go through with this, we're not creating a redundant space that wouldn't be addressed in a new, or better addressed in a new addition, to be rolled into something that would be more cohesive in terms of a picture of the use of the school, of the grounds, of the facilities that we have here. I don't want to be impinging on space that's being used by cross country or kids at recess, or there's all kinds of things that I feel like I would like to make sure. I don't know, we've collected enough information to say for sure that this is the best use of this space before we jump into doing it. I just don't want to be making something that's a solution to a problem we don't necessarily have, when we'll be asking for a lot of money and potentially in another couple of years. So that's my concern.
Just to answer, or not even answer, but the last couple of years we've had the administration come to us a number of times and say that space was a major challenge. Mm-hmm. And there were things that were stored all over the place, and there was literally no storage. We've also heard from groups that are affiliated and regularly help out the school that there's literally no space to store anything that might be used in addition.
Okay.
Like the PTO has said numerous times that I think a lot of school equipment is privately stored just out of the goodwill of people in town.
Okay.
I hear you saying it does not become part of the vision moving forward of a larger campus or of a bigger footprint, but I would argue that simply because it is not part of that, it can be built to a different standard, and it is far more cost effective for us to build storage to more of just a commercial building storage than a school standard. Because if we incorporate storage space into this is basically 2,500 square feet, something 1,900 square feet of storage space into a school edition, it's not going to be $71,000.
It's going to be masonry more than likely. Well, it's going to be a brick structure. It's going to be you're going to have sprinklers. It's going to be an entirely different animal.
So if we went that route, I'm not saying that isn't the right route to go. I don't know, do you know, does anyone have the numbers, like what the square footage cost for building a school is?
Upwards
It's a lot.
$300.
A square foot?
I get that.
So that's $600,000.
Maybe something that would be helpful piece of information. Is it possible between now and the next meeting, perhaps, to have somebody catalog all these things we're talking about? I really am not convinced that we can roll our 10 rows of chairs out into that building over the way with the corners and the ramps and with the way that the parking lot's structured. I'm not convinced that that's going to happen. So maybe it is. But other than that, I would be curious if we did a catalog of the things that are cluttering up our various spots and which are creating safety hazards. I agree that there probably are things that are creating safety hazards and we need to deal with that, or that are privately stored. Could the administration maybe come up with what are those things, and maybe look at some number that would be a realistic prediction of how much square footage we would need to get those things that we currently have out of the building and to free up and make the building safer to walk around. That might be a good piece of information to have for next meeting.
I think, with regards to the chairs, just as an example, I think there's going to be some adaptation. Because, rolling those current carts with the chairs out across, sandy gravel, you're going to catch one rock and stop dead on those casters. Been there, done that, not fun. Lost a tooth, I think. Anyways, we would adapt, right? We would find ways of doing that if that's going to be the way to do it. I think, with regards to safety concern, I think the fire marshal has come in numerous times and said, you guys really need to get rid of that, move that stuff. The other thing too, if we try to incorporate storage space into a building expansion design, that space will be the first one that's looked at if we need to increase space, balloon in that space as well, and then we're right back to needing external space. Whereas if it's external to start with, it's not something that we can convert easily
It's storage and maintenance.
Yeah.
It really is storage and maintenance. I mean,
So what about not being able to convert it? So I agree with that. What if it turns out that we need to expand the paving and the route around the school so that we can improve our traffic flow, but we want to put this extension, let's say, over in this spot on this side? Now we are constrained by that building that we just put in there, so now we're limited and we can't use that space for whatever, some sort of traffic flow design, which might in the end help. So then we'd be shooting ourselves in the foot right now and then we'd be limiting, because we can't change the traffic flow, then we're now limiting what we can do for a footprint of the building, and it all kind of follows.
Those are a million what-if scenarios.
Right.
The end result of doing something like that is you have the entire project, you don't do anything until the entire project is planned out 2 or 3 years from now.
Right.
And there's an immediate need for space use in this building, as you have said.
Right.
Numerous times, we have an immediate pressure in this building. This is not the relief valve to fix educational space, but it is a relief valve to open up space that might be educational that is being used as storage, which is an inappropriate use of the existing footprint of this building.
I mean, I started this whole linear shed thing.
Yeah, nice work.
4 months ago, whatever it was, right? And before a lot of these meetings, I'll come and I'll wander around the building, I'll look around, and again, there's stuff everywhere, okay? And we're a victim of circumstances. Circumstances is there's no more room. We have what should be closets or offices already. So clearly, all of that inherently designed storage space that we have has become offices and server rooms and everything else isn't being a closet. So we've immediately, since day one when this building opened, we've been constricted by, within the 4 walls. and it's only gotten worse as we've turned offices, I believe, is Brian's
Yeah, that's
term.
the fun term, right?
Yeah, is every closet in the building's been converted to an office. So to me, it's no different than we have modulars outside. Well, that's the first sign that your building's not big enough. Well, we have closets being offices. That's the first sign that our building's not big enough. That spot isn't practical for any other use. We're not going to put a school there, right? We're not going to put an addition there. It is for the next 25, 30, 40 years, whatever it may be, that will be a suitable storage, maintenance. As we expand our footprint, we're going to need more maintenance personnel. We're going to need a place to house them, and they're going to need a place to work. And it allows us to have that space. And we're still talking another 4 or 5 years before anything is done that makes this building bigger than what it is. And that's 4 or 5 more years of restricting egress, and 4 or 5 more times the fire marshal's going to come in here and say, that can't be like that. And it's going to be 5 more years of it being like that because there is nowhere for it to go. It's 5 more years without our locker rooms being locker rooms. It's just, we need to do something. And that's as solid of a plan as anything else that has been looked at.
It's a first step. It's not a solution.
I'm wondering how the staff feels about, like, the staff feel like, yes, let's get that shed out there. And the reason I'm saying that, and having been here before, is that, some of the stuff is still sitting there, taking up space from
when you were here?
Was here. And the only thing I have some of the similar questions. I've just been quiet and listening because I feel like I just kind of have to catch up on kind of where we're at with that, because I'm sure we've collected more stuff in those spaces. But I'm trying to figure out, I have this fear, so probably long before any of you would even know or remember this, we tore down a red storage shed that lived out
Right there?
where the high jump, where the long jump pit is. And I think it's not there, right?
The long
Yeah.
jump?
The remnants are still there.
The long jump pit is there. In order to put the long jump pit there, we got rid of this shed, and it was a storage shed, and it had stuff in it. But by the time we tore it down, it was, and it was pretty big. It wasn't as big as what we're talking about now, but it was a good size. It was like a double, maybe at least a double regular size shed. And I just want to be sure that the people will kind of sign on, like, yep, I'm going to be willing to schlep my stuff out there and schlep it back in. That even though in the zeal to, like, get stuff out of here, the practicality is, we use that 7 times a year, and that going out there and getting it, and that the organization, so let's say we put it up, that space gets really organized, because I see what happened, in the locker rooms. It's like crazy Jenga sometimes. Recently I haven't, but I know it had been that way, could get that way. So I have those similar wonders. Like, do you think people will be like, yay, we're getting a shed?
I don't know. That's a question.
I don't think they will be, to be entirely honest with you, that they're going to be like, yay, we're getting the shed.
Because I know one person who is.
Yeah.
The athletic director.
The athletic director, but because it's a shed, right? And so it's very rare that somebody get excited about a shed. But it will be nice to have a fire marshal walk through here and not say, this can't be like this. And it will be nice to create a little bit of breathing space. And there's a lot of stuff in this building that can probably find its way into a dumpster, and no one's ever going to know it's gone. And that needs to be potentially done at the same time. But it still doesn't negate the fact that you need space to put the things that you have to have. And those things that get used a half a dozen times a year or less, they don't need to be taking up space inside this building. And that is the one thing that we have at a premium. And it's going to be until we add on. We don't have enough space. So every 10 square feet of space that we're sucking up with one thing is space lost for whatever else we could be using it for. And again, I like everything. I want it to be put away. I want it organized. I want to build it, and I want it to be organized, and I want it to be laid out. So if the athletics department is going to have a space inside there, I want them to have a space, and it should be kept. And if the PTO has space in there, then it should be a space, and it should be kept. It shouldn't just be open the door and it goes. But it could very easily, there's enough footprint there to be able to organize everything and have it where it is, and you can keep overstock in there. So if there is supplies, and we want to keep overstock of supplies in there for, if we can bulk buy some stuff occasionally. Maybe it benefits us, maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
Really soft paper towels?
Really super soft tissues. So that type of stuff, we still need a footprint for. Our snowblower is in the maintenance guy's office.
It sits next to his desk.
It sits next to his desk.
Our grill is in somebody's garage.
Our grill is in somebody's garage. All that stuff should be here.
Yeah, and keep in mind, this is mid to long-term storage. Like we said, the stuff that we use half a dozen times a year. Yeah, it's a pain in the butt dragging it back and forth across the parking lot, but it's not like you do that every week. Or every day. You shouldn't be, because if you're doing that, you're not utilizing the available space correctly.
And that's not to say one row of chairs doesn't stay inside the building, but the other 8 don't need to be
That's
inside.
what I was thinking.
Right. So that kind of stuff that you use very infrequently, maybe once a year, maybe slightly more than that, that's where that belongs. And the stuff that is you use immediately, you keep inside the building. But now you have the room to organize that better and have and be more efficient with that space, because it's not being taken up with dead.
We can also give the maintenance department some actual room to work. So they could take a small portion of the second story and build a workshop up there. So if he has to tear something apart, he's not doing it on his desk or on the break room
Or
area.
the furnace.
Yeah, or on top of the furnace. So those are the other things that we're not taking into consideration. Is just from a maintenance standpoint. If he has to take apart a blower motor for something to fix it, he doesn't have any room to take it apart. You go inside that space, there's no room inside there. So it also gives him some flexibility to be able to, I need to fix this, I need to take it apart, I need to order the parts to fix it, I need to leave it apart and not have it take up his entire office.
And I think that, that's helpful to hear some of those things. I just was like, how big do we need it? How big does it need to be? And is it worthy of at least getting a general inventory? Like, I don't know if you've done that before. Like saying, okay, well, what exactly? So now we know that's going in it. We know that chairs are going in it. We got a grill in someone's garage that'll go in it. But what would it be good for us to have a general idea? What's the athletic director putting in there?
There's ping pong tables.
Right, but I know, so you can name one thing, but I'm saying she might have 15,
She probably
or
does,
she may
yeah.
have 6. And I guess I'm interested in
Theater.
so would it be too much to ask before we lay out the money to just say, all right, everybody tell us what would go in there? Because maybe we go, oh my gosh, it needs to be bigger.
And maybe there are things like the countertops that you discovered from 20 years ago, and maybe part of the reason
building's to everything.
So maybe part of the reason we don't have any space here is because we haven't thrown away the countertops from 20 years ago. So in terms of an inventory, when was the last time we actually purged the storage space that we already have and cleaned up stuff that doesn't?
Brian said they've done that pretty regularly.
Okay.
I think there's still stuff.
Okay.
I still question the logic of keeping the countertop for the last 25 years.
Right on. I agree.
But I asked Brian about that, and he says that's a fairly continual process of.
But even though they purge it, it's like when you.
It's my purge or is it somebody else's purge?
Well, it's like when you move, and after a while you go, you know, it's been 10 years since I moved, and I still haven't opened that box. Obviously, I don't need it. It needs to go. Whether we've gone to that depth here, I'm in agreement with you. I don't know. We've purged regularly, but what does that mean? Is that
So, by
they
and-
purge or?
I'm not necessarily against having external storage, but I would love to kind of make sure to be sure of what exactly we need by knowing and understanding what we can get rid of that's already laying around, and also who has stuff that would be like, yeah, we definitely would get that out of our space, out of the stairwell, out of the hallway, out of the office, and into the storage
Right,
space.
or what additional closets would turn into offices next year as we continually are tighter.
Because it may mean also that in your design thinking for that you may actually have to spend some extra money to internally create something that will allow us to organize this stuff that needs to go in there. as
Shelving
well.
structures.
Yeah. You'll put countertops.
See, there was a reason they kept $20 for the countertops for 4 years.
So, is the intent of the board that we would like to consider this at our next meeting, and in that time have a thorough assessment done of all of the, is that the intent of the board, or is there anyone who wants to consider this at this meeting? Feedback, please.
I'm willing to wait for an inventory. And I think that's probably the right thing to do, due diligence.
Is that
I'll delegate as assigned other duties as assigned.
yes?
Isn't there something like that in my?
Yes, everybody's
That's-
contract has that other.
Yeah, that's
design.
the clause it falls under.
So, and I don't think you just want to think about what exists currently, but what hypothetically might exist in the next year or two.
We probably need some help from the PTO because I know there are some things being stored off-site that we may not even realize. Do you mind getting us a list of?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
That will help.
Boom, done.
Yeah, done.
Just
And
have
have-
the building already.
But I do want floor to ceiling shelving, because I don't have big stuff, I have lots of little stuff. Like, it really does have to,
Be organized.
yeah.
Nothing better than a nice organized shed.
Well,
It's like heaven.
and having Mike on board, making sure he's involved in helping you, if
He's been involved in
he is involved with. Okay, good, excellent.
Yeah, I made copies and shared the three.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
look into that.
But also just in terms of what he would put in it, if he needed, what does he need space for? Yeah.
He's worried about the space, like he doesn't, the ledge and the same things you were bringing up, and the hill and, yeah.
I remember that when the greenhouse was being considered, that Fred McGarry came and looked at the hill
Yeah.
and said that you weren't going to have a problem.
Okay.
So I could reach out to him again and just, this is a memory from years ago at this point, so I
That'd be
could reach
great.
out and,
That'd be
but I
great.
believe that they did an engineering survey of that.
Okay. Then maybe he still has it on file somewhere.
Yeah, I don't think he did cores or anything of the sort, but he was like, it's not going to be a problem.
Okay.
So we will consider this at our next meeting.
Okay.
That was a long one. What's the next thing we want to play with?
You asked us to seek some more quotes and bids for the radios. The proposal that the town had helped us put together for being compatible with their systems. We did put that out, and we got no other bids other than our original.
that in that file?
I don't know that it was because it was, no,
think it
not in
is.
that one.
There's
It was on the
nothing
drive,
here,
Oh,
because it was
No,
the old.
it's in the, it's,
You want a copy?
Did you put it in your packets?
that's what she put it, yeah, it's,
Okay.
no.
I had that copy. So
Eric.
I can make copies.
Do you want me to just read it off?
yeah,
Okay.
if you would.
So, the proposal dated 7/17/2018,
It would, and we do have a follow-up email from him saying
Confirming.
the proposal could still work within those terms.
total cost of $18,511.33, which would cover basic everything for radios, everything we need, right?
Everything,
So,
yeah.
That's what the town put together, and that's what
Okay.
they told us we needed, so we're trusting that they know a lot more about it than we do.
and this replaces existing radios that we have, and this gives you the ability to communicate out with emergency services in the event that you need to.
And have them officially programmed and not just like, you know,
Not like your
Radio
family
Shack.
radio like the kids have. The ones my
stay
son runs
close so
around
we
with.
can hear you.
Okay, so this is from Two-Way Communications in Newington, New Hampshire.
And would these be on like a, I do not know the correct term, but like secure channels so that only we and the police and fire have access to hearing it? Well, I say we, but
Yes,
Yeah, I think they said
they
that.
officially programmed them for us.
they do. Okay, so they're not like scannable and all that. Good. Okay.
18 is a reasonable number of these walkie-talkies.
7,500? No?
No, that's cable.
18 of them is what I
18 of them?
Yeah.
So they're $1,000 a piece, basically, with all of the equipment to make them work properly.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah, okay. Because the total's 18,000,
Right.
so per.
Yeah, this, oh, that's
Fully,
right.
fully functional.
Yeah.
They're adding repeaters
Yeah,
to,
those
to make them
repeaters.
work and all
Yeah.
that stuff. So that's a big portion of your expense.
This is something we need to have.
It was in our original safety grant.
Didn't get
I
funded.
think we got waitlisted, but I don't know that we're gonna make it this year.
So if the money were to show up after we've spent it anyway, can we still
You can
receive
submit
the
it.
grant money? So we can continue to try to.
Oh
get
yeah,
the
we're
grant
still on
covered.
the list. We're on
We
the
are.
wait list.
I think we have until December 30th.
Next December.
Yeah, the infrastructure money did become available again, but basically the information that I got on it was that if you don't have a number next to your wait list, then chances are that you will not receive a second round of funding. The first round of funding paid for the cameras and things like that, so.
They've kept everything waiting. If you submitted, they've kept you on file because as time has gone by, the governor has released kind of chunks of money, so that's why we've kept it in.
Or people haven't
It's awfully
used their
generous
money
of
and
you.
it's come back in the pot.
That's right.
All right, so I will move, well, I guess my question, this is coming out of available balance?
Yes.
Okay. Do we know what that number appears to be?
Approximately 560,000.
All right, so I'll move $18,511.33 for the upgrade of the radios to Two-Way Communications.
Second.
Any discussion?
This came initially from our audit from the Homeland Security. That's why we're talking. Okay.
Any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. What's next? Hot water?
We have
Megan?
a request for some tables for, I think it was STEM, right, for the STEM lab? Yep. I believe the total cost is about $2,000. There's a picture from Brooke, 5 tables around the perimeter that would seat 15 big kids almost comfortably. The kids would be very comfortable. And then a flipping store.
It was in the original packet that I was like. It's an email sent to
Where would these go?
So Brooks Vision.
In the
I-
shed.
What's that? In the shed. And when kids need it, we'll just go grab them.
Alright, you set it up, I'm gonna take a shot.
Brooks Vision, she actually has a map. I wish I don't think I copied that, but we'd like to remove those bookshelves back there. We also have, Brian looked into bookshelves to replace them, the rolling bookshelves, and we'll go along the wall back there. And then the two that she wants, the second table, the top table is 5 to go around the perimeter, and the second table is to put kind of in the center so that it's a working space for kids.
So what was the total expenditure for the total request?
2,000, not including the shelves. That's just the tables.
Right. So I mean, if we're moving forward with the STEM lab, we need to assume that we're moving forward with equipping it so that we can actually use it.
We don't need chairs, as you can see.
We have chairs.
So do we have a motion?
I'll move
2,000?
an amount up to $2,000 for tables for the STEM lab.
Second.
Any discussion?
I keep coming back to the vision here. So this is going to be eating into our library. This is going to be reducing our library space. Right when we're looking for a new librarian, is this consistent with what we see this space being used as until we get a new building or addition or whatever's going to happen?
Is it eating into the library, or is it providing a different configuration that the librarian could use as well?
I think there's nothing permanent, that's why I think we're doing the rolling shelves and then the tables that are small enough to be easily maneuvered.
It looks like the middle tables could be collapsed.
Yeah, they're foldable. Yeah.
And foldable.
Yep.
As well as movable.
So this looks like this space over here is used for displaying something on the whiteboard or something like that, and that would still be. Can we still use it for that?
No, we're looking to replace this with some sort of smart board. I don't have those numbers for you, but that is the hope is that we can keep that one over there for the work that they need to do, and then replace this pull down with some sort of
Whiteboard,
Does that eat into overlap of time? Are we going to have a library class at the same time we're going to be having a STEM class or activity or something?
That really hasn't been worked out, but the space, that piece has not been worked out.
I guess I wouldn't, I mean, if that's the case, then that would mean you'd have to put a wall up here, and now we really are permanently shrinking our library.
There's another, Brian looked into bookshelves.
Yeah.
Our hope is, he does measurements, and our hope is to put the bookshelves coming out from the center and coming out from that center.
I just mean in terms of time and scheduling, you can't have two groups at the same time using this space and then not have some sort of a soundproofing. You know what I mean?
I mean,
so does that? I don't know. It's just all sort of connected, and it's hard to. Your point is, if you just try to get it all figured out, then you do nothing. So.
Well, that was kind of bluntly put, but
which is true. I agree.
What's that space used for now? I mean, you have the middle school collection up there, right? Which would go onto shelves, so that would still exist.
Right.
And then you have a couple of tables and a bunch of chairs. How often are they actually doing whiteboard presentations over there?
I can't answer that. But whatever is done there can be done over here.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's set up like a theater. Kind of.
Right. But that would be happening during a library class. So, like during a 45-minute library period during the day is when is that? This is a question. Is that when, like, if it's library time, are students either in this room or they're in that room, and either they're reading here or they're presenting or something over there? But this whole space is used for that 45-minute block by one group of students.
Those are pieces that we're going to work into the library media specialist position and the technology integrated position. Like that's something that there are times when the library is vacant, the library space is vacant.
Okay.
Brooke will be able to answer those questions a lot better. She's got a terrific vision for how she sees that working.
But I guess my point is that unless it's after school, using that space is going to be impinging on the use of the library. And so making them both work is going to require a revisiting of the schedule. Am I missing, right or not?
I think so, but I think that if they requested it, they'll probably work those.
Figure it out.
It's not gonna be
Okay.
a set class, it's,
Okay.
there's a,
Be a little more fluid as well.
yeah,
so.
yes, exactly.
And it's
Especially
gonna-
this first year, working through this first year of the
Okay.
utilization of that space.
It's gonna depend a lot on collaboration
Yeah.
between Brooke and the new
Okay.
library.
And that library media specialist may also be able to benefit from that space as
Correct.
well. I mean, it's,
That's the hope,
we're creating educational modules
yes,
And
Okay.
maybe
within our footprint.
because we have nowhere else to put it.
Either the library media specialist or Brooke could be one of those flex schedule teachers. Something could be running.
That's right, I mean, we have that whole
We have that.
option open to us now.
Okay.
See, a couple hours after school. All right, so we have a motion for $2,000. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we wanna do the bookshelves while we're on the,
So I love the idea of bookshelves on wheels. I think it will drastically
So these are,
improve the usage of this space, or the potential usage of this space.
they do.
Yep.
Isn't that adorable?
no, I looked because I didn't see them either.
That's so cute.
It would definitely improve the flexibility of this.
You can imagine all three of these rows being able to just be pushed back or to the sides.
Think of how much room we would have for the audience when it comes to these meetings.
Right?
It's Andrew.
Yeah.
Andrew.
And there are 48-inch and 60-inch.
And so Brian, just to give you a visual, that back shelf is a 60-inch.
Tall.
Yeah.
So you can,
Those are
These-
48 by 40.
Yes, and those are, yeah, the first shelf down is about 48.
So we're looking, so basically those come out, you're gonna replace those with these. Is
It's
the-
coming off of the.
Off of the column on both
column,
directions, and you'll have a doorway or an entryway
Yeah.
into that space on both sides.
He figured this is 9 feet, this is a 3, so it'll be this and the add, he called it an adder.
Okay.
Oh, they do call it an adder, I thought he made up that word. So the,
You're
first
giving
page
him credit for
is,
something he didn't do.
so he was giving us the option of either the 48s or the 60s, right?
correct.
I think, to me, those, if you put 60s there and they're rolling, they're gonna close that space off quite a bit, so if the goal is to help facilitate closing that off and making it more of a segregated
With
area,
the ability to flexibly move it out.
with the ability to say, okay, we need to open this up, and you can literally just push them off to the side. I mean, if you're gonna have a need for the space, you can stack them against the other ones against the wall. You're not accessing the books, you just move them out of the way. The second question is how easily will, they're 68, 60, I mean, they're gonna be heavy when they're loaded up with books.
Right.
So you'll need a couple of people, I'm sure, to muckle them around. But what does the administration want? Do they want 48s or do they want 60s? I want a shed.
Can I,
People put some-
It's a great question, and I don't know, it's a hard question to answer because
Could we do an approve up to, and that way give folks that need to
Well,
collaborate a little bit more time?
how many of these are you asking for?
So we're asking for 2 for this side and 2 for that side. So if we did the 60-inch,
They're all $6,000.
it would be about $6,000.
6, and then the adders are how much more?
That's what the average.
That's for the others. So the starter would be 1,500 and the adder is about 1,300.
What I wanna do is these.
Okay.
I don't see, seriously, if we have a 5th grade, 4th grade. 4th grade right now is 72 kids, and one of the questions that we had was, how do we possibly fit them all into one meeting space and have presentations and stuff? And currently that kind of stuff, when they get to 6th grade, is done in one room. This room can accommodate, if you have these 3 rows moved out of the way, this room can accommodate quite a few people.
What are your other options for when that time comes? I mean, that's they're fifth grade next year, and it's coming fast, you're not gonna have an addition by the time they're in middle school. Those kids aren't gonna really have an opportunity to see the benefit of a bigger building. Or they're really not gonna have an opportunity to see that. So, how do you, is it in here, is it in the cafeteria, how?
The cafeteria is booked, feeding kids most of the day.
Fourth grade now, we've used the space with them, but just, they do their biography thing in here, biography.
Presentations and.
Yeah.
Again, flexibility wise, this, it would make this much more of an asset, not only during the school day, but after school, evening, you can definitely, you know, things like the biography projects could be laid out completely different. You know, like you said, push everything to one wall. You have a much more flexible, wide open space.
There are 5 per row. So it's 15 of them. And they're 4 feet, right? Double faced. Is that this front one?
Basically, yeah.
I'd say 3 feet double space.
The front page is 40, the back page is 60.
Are these 3 feet or 4 feet?
Or 2 feet.
So they're 2 feet wide.
No, deep, yeah.
But yeah, and that feels like 3 feet.
Oh, I gotcha, yeah.
So this doesn't feel like 4 feet. It feels like they're 4 feet tall and 3 feet wide.
Which is what
So
your
this-
48 by 24 deep by,
He doesn't say how wide they are.
So you're trying to go for them all at once or anything?
I think those,
Or
I,
is that?
my thought is make it as flexible as it can possibly be.
24
Situation where you have
double face units.
some flexibility at this point where we're bringing in.
We should try to have one conversation so that the
Right.
audio is picking up.
Right, thank you. So we are going to have a new librarian next year. We already have a new STEM space project led by Brooke. My phone's in
It's a frog.
The existing space, I mean, being able to move things around and restructure within the space might be something that somebody who is new and creative and had a different thought about how this should be set up would benefit from. These 3 rows take up more than half of this room and cannot move.
there's a whole bunch of different ways to configure this entire.
If they're on wheels, you could do it. You could change it every week.
Yep. To highlight certain things and
To free up more space in the center, do you do
So
a bunch of
there's-
6 foot
So that one
fingers off the walls and.
Is there anything about safety codes as to why they're fixed to the, like, for kids climbing on them so they don't pull them over or something like that?
If the casters are built in though, does that mean what does that mean?
The rolls.
You might need
Built
to.
in,
You might need to like.
that they're stationary until you put the casters down.
4-inch concealed casters.
They're
are
concealed,
mounted
that's what I mean, so is
directly
it,
into
I
steel.
think they give the appearance of not being mobile. They're just recessed, but they just happen to be mobile.
I might be making this up, but I feel like there might be some sort of code where you don't want to have a kindergartner climbing on the shelves and pulling them over because they're not fixed to the floor. So I don't know. But
So,
somebody should look.
Here's what,
You don't think they're fixed to the
Of course
floor?
not.
Oh. Somebody push it over? Pull it. It looks like actually the carpet goes under.
Right. I mean, with books, it's probably.
Heavy.
so I'm gonna say this, I think from a sanity point, we should assess, let's finish the STEM lab first.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna move $6,000 for an amount up to $6,000 for the cabinets, for the STEM lab, with the administration deciding on height, whatever they think configuration makes most sense.
second.
Discussion on the shelving for the STEM lab. All in favor? Oh, sorry. Yes, Mr. Allison.
My concern is overutilizing the space and trying to have two classes happening at the same time in that space and in this space, and in the end making it worse for everybody. So if the idea is to try to block it off so that we can have two classes, I feel like that. I mean, I'll leave it to the administration to decide that, but that would be my concern, is that trying to cram too much into, obviously, we need more space, but that would reduce the functionality of the library, and I think it would impede on kids trying to focus on what's happening in their class. And so, I don't know. That's my one caveat.
And the only thing I think, so we're in the process of hiring a librarian. That would be my only concern, is that you're making although I'm not denying that Brooke has a grand design plan, which is awesome, but would it be beneficial for the two of them to have a conversation about it?
Is her plan consistent with the school's plan? Is this in the best interest of the school? Right, I agree. Having the two of them talk about it would be, having a cohesive plan would be even better than having.
Right. I don't think it would get brought forward if it was
right.
not inconsistent with the school's plan.
Right.
But I'm wondering if the two of them, if it's worth.
There is no new librarian yet.
Right. But that would be my only hesitancy to say, like, right now. But yet, that's what I'm worried about, because there's a time frame I'm imagining in terms of encumbering funds.
I mean, if having mobile bookshelves over there either way, no matter what ends up happening, is an okay thing. And having tables is not a bad thing. I can't imagine two professionals that would be competing against each other in a library. I can't imagine that they wouldn't collaborate and either do joint classes or, one's here and one's not. Like you said, sometimes the library is not used for a full class. Kids could still come in and check out books, but there's something else going on over there.
It almost, Nate, are you suggesting that we actually separate that into its own classroom, so you come in and you put
No, that's worse.
He's concerned.
Okay.
That's worse.
But I think that discussion, I think we should move forward with what we're doing. But I think we hold off on replacing these until we get the new librarian. Two reasons. One, we see how those work, because we may get them and go, ew, this isn't really a good solution. But two, I think it would be important as part of the interview process for Brooke to have that discussion, or be part of the discussion with the candidates about that vision.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's part of the interview process.
Because it is definitely going to Nate's point, it is definitely going to be highly dependent upon their ability to collaborate and make that work.
Because first and foremost, this is the librarian's space.
Right.
And by nature, STEAM or maker spaces or whatever you call them are collaborative, which also makes them noisy.
Right. Alright, so we are in the weeds on this one. Do we want to trust the administration and let them get their shelves?
Yes.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I feel like I pull us out of the weeds on that one.
Well done, Zach.
Rarely does that happen.
Harry,
Has it ever?
what is next?
I believe you probably want to do after non-public.
Correct.
And then Mike submitted a packet of bids. I'm not sure, I think it just came, proposals, so on things we've already discussed in the prior. So do you want to take those and then have a chance to look at them and we'll bring them back in 2 weeks?
Correct.
Okay.
You should also schedule a public hearing for the next meeting, just for the LED lighting. Correct?
Yep.
On Mike's things,
Would you like me to explain what's in here?
I was going to say, you want
Go ahead.
a quick recap if we can? Okay.
And Zach, feel free to hop, because I know you and Mike.
Is this in the drive? Patty, is this in the drive? It's like it's not.
No, Kristen handed it out tonight.
Kathy.
Oh, she got it in too?
Yeah, I
Oh.
emailed this Kathy and she got it into the drive.
There
But I
should have
made
been-
copies. Do you have copies over there?
I just reloaded it. I think I found what you're talking about. Okay, I got them all. Yep.
You want me to field it? Is that easier for you?
Doesn't matter, whatever you want.
Okay, I can tackle it. I've been so quiet tonight.
You have been so quiet, but I was just would like to point out these nice blue folders that Mike provided for me. I'm very proud of him. He did a nice job.
So the three items that Mike has listed out here. So the first one's a hot water heater. It's due for replacement. So you see a couple of quotes from Comfort Systems, from RTH, and from Granite State Plumbing and Heating. Basically, he's looking to replace it with a similar unit of similar size. He and I spent some time talking about if there was a need to put in a redundant system for our current water heater so the kitchen had an independent system, because that's really what drives most of the need for our hot water in the building, is to be able to clean inside the kitchen. He feels like a new unit with an updated set of controls will take care of everything we need to do, and I agree with him. One of the things we talked about was actually getting the new unit set into a program and on a proper set of controls, so it's not constantly keeping the water at a max temp when the building's empty, because currently that's what's happening. So we're heating water 24/7 for what's effectively an 8-hour school day, 5 days a week. Even the cleaning staff, I talked about that. He said the chemicals they buy are all cold water soluble, so it's really bringing the hot water temp up just before the start of school, running it until the kitchen closes at, say 1:30, 2 o'clock, and then idling the water temp back down to something a little more reasonable. So we will see also those savings in energy usage as well.
The current water heater is 20 years old.
Great. It's had a few birthdays. It's almost old enough to drink. Okay. The second item is a redundant, basically we have one oil pump feeding both of our boilers. So if that pump goes down, the school is closed because we don't have any backup. So the new system he's proposing is a double redundancy. It's 2 pumps, basically to feed the 2 boilers, and it just allows us a little bit of an insurance policy. If one oil pump goes down, we are not without the ability to operate the boilers and open the school. And then the third item was one that he and I talked about a wee bit, was the elevator. It's actually got there's a bunch of other stuff in here too that I hadn't seen from him yet, so I'm going to let you grab that, Kristen, but was the elevator. And that is, current unit is a 500-pound capacity, and from what Mike was telling me is that some of the electric wheelchairs, by the time you take the wheelchair and the person in it, can exceed that 500-pound capacity. So he wants us to start considering upgrading that to a 750-pound capacity, which should be able to handle anything. That elevator strictly just goes from the gym floor level up to the stage level. So it's at 4 foot or so rise. He has one estimate in here. It was a much bigger project. But I suggested to him that he at least get it in front of the board so we can see it and think about it and know that it's out there.
The last 2 things in there, I do have, he put together the bathroom numbers, so this is his handwritten chicken scratch. But he wrote out what the fixtures are at Granite Group. They're on the shelf. They're ready to be pulled. He's planning on doing the work the last day of school is the 19th, and he's planning on starting it the next day when the kids are out of the building. He has a plumber ready to go. He has the labor laid out for that, and he also has an in-house person that's willing to do the painting. So we just have to pay for the supplies for that.
And so this is, so his number of 2,300, it's 2,300 in materials and outside labor.
Mm-hmm.
Per bathroom?
Per game bathroom.
For the game bathroom, up there, the
So
game
for each one? That's one price?
That should be per bathroom.
Yeah.
So, and then was he gonna do, weren't we gonna attack a bunch of bathrooms?
Yeah, I think the thought was to go all the way through. So if we have if we handle, so my question, if we handle this in-house, can we do all of them this summer without neglecting all the other summertime projects that need to be done, and just the general maintenance and upkeep and cleaning and waxing of the floors and everything else?
Finishing the gym.
Yeah, there's just a lot that gets done in the summer, and I think he's probably busier in the summer than he is any time of the year, any other time of the year. This is,
The plan is to do that one, well, the plan, this was for that one, the plan was for that one bathroom,
So he wants to do just one bathroom this summer.
for this summer, but we can,
so I think the board's thoughts were to redo all of them,
yeah,
all the game bathrooms this summer. And so,
Didn't we already have a hearing and approve that?
not that,
No, that wasn't
we talked
talking
about
about
that.
We didn't pull it.
So this
But
would
we
be from
We
the
did
trust
pull
fund.
money for the treads. I
Well, you
thought.
had, some you had to have a public hearing for, and some you already raised and appropriated the amount, right? Wasn't it
Yeah.
75,000 and 75?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it all went into the trust fund. So,
Right,
so
some was
as we're
surplus
drawing,
and some was.
right, so as we're drawing off the trust fund, we have to have a public hearings for it. So this was, Madam serves me right, the updating the bathrooms was planned for, the next kind of wave of projects. And doing all the bathrooms would have been a relatively, extensive project. I've only been in a couple of I think I've walked into 2 of the boys' rooms over the years, but we have the partitions in there as well, and verifying the condition of the partitions, as well as laboratory sinks and all that stuff. I don't know if he had kind of was looking to address that. So I mean, I see paint, I see fixtures.
We aren't going to get in the weeds on this. Remember, we're going to talk about this in 2 weeks.
Do you have questions
Oh.
for him?
Yeah, I think this is a partial refresh of a bathroom, and I think we were looking for a more complete refresh of the bathrooms.
I'm okay with going with just one bathroom. So I'm happy to revisit this, but I don't know. There's a lot of things on here, and I would like the money to come from the trust fund, and so I would like to look at how much we have and think about, I mean, the stairs are important. I think all of these things are, but then it may be that adding all of the bathrooms on top of that may make it too much money. I don't know.
Well, if we're having a public hearing in 2 weeks for the LED lights,
Yeah.
we can add additional things. Like we'd already talked about the stair, the treads. So that should be included in that hearing. I would like to hear that. Do we need to have a motion in order to?
I thought the treads we approved in the last wave.
they were, but then there was only one quote from Deck Tech, and so Mike has gotten 2 more quotes, so we have 3 quotes, but Deck Tech is the one that came in.
But we already approved the funding.
I think that one's already been
On a
approved.
public hearing, I think.
Oh, sorry, I'll double check.
I believe the stair treads is done. I think we've already dealt with that.
So they should not be in our packet. If we've
Or-
already,
We've already approved it.
great.
But you needed more than one quote.
Yeah, we only have 1 quote.
Okay.
So we have 3 quotes now, and we're ready to roll with Deck Tech. That's the
Consensus.
But I guess if we only we had 150,000, we've spent 60,000 so far from the last, or we okayed 60,000 last time, or 50,000?
60, we had 150, 75 more going in, we had about 180 to start,
Okay.
approximately.
And so with these items that we're looking at here, the new water heater was, what was that, 12,000? The new oil pump was 20,000? Right, so we're getting, I mean, I don't know, I would like to look at and then there also, did those, so I guess my question is, did those come from the engineering study, or were those discovered by Mike?
The oil pump was not on the engineers.
Okay, so then in doing that, I'm not arguing we need to do it, but that's not what was on the trust fund when we asked for in that warrant language, we said to be working on the engineering study, so that's not accomplishing what we said, and so I just want to be looking at the whole thing while we decide to do, and it may be that we just do one bathroom now, and maybe the next bathroom next summer is fine with me. So I want to look at the whole picture, not just.
I think for the next meeting, what we really should do is have current available balance in the fund, the amount moving forward, and
what's been approved? Or
Yeah, well, we approved the warrant, because that'll be hitting it July 1st, effectively. And I thought we did 75 for this, was it 75 for this year, or 100 for this year?
The year we're in right now, or the one we just approved in March?
75 and 75.
Yeah, it's another 150.
For the year we're in. But for the one that starts in July, it's less than 150.
Yeah, we put in 150, 75 and 75
Both years.
already.
Yeah,
But what we just passed in March
was 50 something.
was another 50. So I just want to get the clarification when that money's going to hit. And the next wave of money that we were approved by the town is going to hit. And then we can,
And maybe looking at the engineering study, and what have we crossed off so far, and what have we not crossed off?
we can bring that list back too. I think we have
Do
that.
you have a copy of the engineering study?
There's a folder on the drive.
She did a folder in the drive with all of it.
It might be worth some night when you want to go to bed quickly. Sure. All right. So, thank you. Is there anything else?
That covers the stack.
All of it? Alright.
I think so. Who ordered pizza? Dun, 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 dun.
We haven't even gotten to the one part of the night.
We're on the work session now.
Didn't you just work? Well, I'm not sure how much, if you're,
So yeah, we did talk pretty extensively last time around big picture stuff. There are a couple of workshops that have come up which are going to fall under informational items, which I think might be a great first step. I believe the conversation around our building out back that might potentially happen is a space needs issue. Is there anything anyone wants to add at this point?
So are we having our space needs conversation right now, or
Yes.
okay? So at the last meeting, we kind of talked about a deadline of deadlines, and so I spent some time thinking about that, and where it's very difficult to create a full deadline of deadlines without knowing what you're doing. Right. So I mean, I got out a few months, and then there's too much indecision to be able to get forecasted beyond a couple of months of like what are we trying to get to. So I mean, the big question is to really try to lay out a plan. And I was just I was throwing bullets up into a questions basically that I'm seeing that we need to figure out this month. But at what point do we determine at what point do we determine, like, you know, there has to be stop go points along the way, right? So sometime in October there needs to be a stop go point, like, is there a warrant for this year for engineering money, or are we putting out an RFP for a design build, but we still need to get to the point where we have answers to those questions to be able to create that, and that's where it became very difficult to say, okay, we need to figure those things out. So, like, do we need more space? Yes. Do we need, do we need it? When do we need to start construction? What's the timetable to build? And there's just too much unknown and unanswered this is a huge undertaking. So, I mean, there's just a lot there. So, I mean, I threw a couple of meetings worth of bullet points up, and I can kind of crash through them real quick. If you guys want. If not, I can be quiet.
I think it's a little painful, but let's do it.
Okay. I'll try to be less painful.
Before you start.
You two are not starting. Look at it.
No, it's a discussion that obviously needs to happen.
Right.
But how can we talk about hard numbers and deadlines and everything?
I couldn't get anywhere near.
Good,
Right.
because we don't have any idea of what space we need, what that space is going to look like. So I just wanted to make sure that we were not starting to count the number of bricks we were going to need.
As much as I'd love to, we can't. So
could I add one more thing
Yeah.
before we make up? is that the discussion last time was really, really interesting and made me, and I imagine other board members come to a clarification that I have no idea what education is going to look like in 4 or 5 years.
Oh, I feel good. I felt like I was like.
I have no idea. I don't have the base knowledge to know. There are people at this table who do have a sense of where things are going to go, but not that far. Is that an endless conversation?
Right.
I think it is an endless conversation.
So with that being said, we walk us through what you got.
So here's what I just jotted down when I was really spent some time thinking about this a week or so ago. So maybe today, right? I went by month. Maybe reviewing and outlining the schedule for the upcoming months. So we're talking about that right now. Okay. Second one was a continued discussion on what a DCS education looks like. That's a huge question, and it kind of carries over from month to month to month to month, and it's going to end up driving a lot of the things that we're thinking about. June meeting and start identifying the immediate space needs, which we've dabbled with a little bit. Discuss our current space, what restrictions we have with our current building, what programs could see improvement from additional space. In July, how does additional space improve the education for our students? How does this, in addition, benefit the rest of the community? Potential operating costs for the additional space from just a tax, you got to start bringing numbers into it at some point. Not counting bricks, but from a budgetary standpoint. Anticipated increases in staffing and those associated costs. Because again, we've got to start rolling in more data, right? August is starting to see community input on a project that benefits the school and the town, and then continuing conversations from previous meetings. September was the last one I was really able to do anything with, but it was start looking at budget, determine how the board expects to move forward, determine if the board wants to move forward with the project. Would the project be a design build, or would it, what would an RFP timeline look like? Is the board looking to seek engineering dollars through a warrant in 2020, and then continuing to seek involvement from the community? But beyond that, without starting to know what a general consensus of what the idea is, it's hard to go beyond that.
And we're at basically, that is more or less the deadline for us to start working on the budget for the following year. And that would then eat the next 2 to 3 months of meetings anyhow. So,
yeah. And so I think your initial timetable is once the commitment is generated that yes, we need more space, like full, and we've done that, and we've done it a couple of times. We said yes, we need more space, yes, we need more space. But at some point we have to say yes, we need to go to the community and say we need money for space. Are we going for money in 2020? Are we going for money in 2021? Are we trying to do engineering in 2020 with a full bond in 2021? Is it 2021 and 2022? Mm-hmm. And I can't answer that question same way either. And that affects the timeline.
My personal inclination is that we need professionals to guide us.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go for engineering money. My inclination is to go for engineering money, yes.
On top of having professionals guide us, I think that there are school districts that have been through this process. I wonder whether it's worth actually trying to communicate, meet with, I don't know anybody in our SAU, but what if we talked to a couple different, or had a small group of us, I guess we couldn't have a whole meeting anyway, but maybe just somehow make contact with other boards who have been through this. And
Barrington just built a middle school a couple of years ago.
Okay. That kind of a thing.
Was that a couple of years ago?
Barrington Middle School?
It's like 15 years, I think.
I think that
old.
So, our SAU actually did. Pembroke did an engineering study and hired an architect, and we have plans for an addition for the Hill School. Mm-hmm. And Allenstown just hired an architect, and they had their first set of plans proposed on Monday night. So it's 2 different firms.
Is it so the process? So maybe you can walk us through. You obviously be most familiar with Pembroke's process, but can you tell us how that process worked? Because at some point you were sitting in a board meeting with them, and they were probably having the exact same conversation we're having.
So they approved the funding for us to hire an architect. He brought us a proposal. We had some meetings with me, the principal, a board rep, our facilities manager, started gathering, it was a long process, and we started gathering information, okay, how many classrooms do we think we need? It was the initial conversation about merging the two schools. So we took, okay, we have 10 classrooms at this school, let's say we added 10 classrooms to this building, what would that look like? And you always get back something much grander and, than you're ever gonna move forward with. We didn't we didn't do a whole lot of research in, what education's going to look like in the future. We went with traditional classrooms and upgrading the building that we were adding on to at the same time. So, in terms of technology and infrastructure stuff.
And we already have that information when we did the engineering study.
Engineering for construction is different than engineering on the existing
There was construction information in the initial study.
Yeah.
In an initial study. And there was plans drawn out with space, and they I think they're a little bit more in depth than what you think. But
part of that process was them telling us, like, okay, is it even buildable back there? Can we even do an addition back there? We were concerned about it's on a hill, and there's been water issues coming down, and they did all of that. And they came and did a board presentation. Their fee included X number of presentations to the board, showing plans, showing the public, reworking.
I guess another question for you is about how big of an addition is Pembroke proposing?
We aren't right at the moment. We that was our initial intention, and we did 10 classrooms and adding an auditorium. But now we've pulled back from that. We've got 2 modulars. We're merging the buildings, and then we're going to move forward.
Do you know how much the cost of the engineering was?
No, but I can get that easily enough.
Because it sounds like a similar circumstance, right? Space.
Yep.
I think that'd be an interesting thing just for us to kind of get an idea of is, I hear engineering costs are all over the board. Depends on the level of engineering you have.
Yeah, our engineering study was more like your initial, except that, it was obviously 4 buildings, so they did soup to nuts, everything. And then from there, the monies were really for the architectural firm who had, subcontractors or whatever you want to call them, for them too.
I like your timeline. Could you share that as a document with us?
Yeah, I can blast that up to you to distribute.
I think,
and I really wanted to pin it down tighter, but I just.
Right. Is there anything, Ken? You've been playing in this space for a while. Is there anything you want to add to that?
no, I think that's I think that's a good timeline. Again. We don't know. I understand. I agree that we have a lack of experience, and nobody has a good sense of what education is going to look like in 5 to 10 years. My response to that is, it is whatever we make it. We can do what we want, so it needs to be consistent with. I guess that first question, to use what Zach just had up there, was what does a DCS education look like? I think we're already headed in the direction that it makes the most sense to separate out the junior high and give that its own identity. But what can we do with that? And what do we need to do with that? Megan and the young man that was here earlier said that they felt that we had done the school had done a good job prepping them for high school. We obviously don't want to lose that, but are there other things that we could bring in that would enhance that preparation for high school and further on? And I think that's where we need to start, is what that vision truly is, and let that vision inform the space. I really don't want to see us build another collection of concrete boxes.
I had a glass roof in my
So I would like to see some sort of flexible space where we have collaborative space, we have focus space, we have, that flexibility to move back and forth. Because one of the big things that we've seen in looking at the population numbers is the ebb and flow. And one of the biggest issues that we have here is those concrete walls don't kind of have to move. So
Or the bookshelves.
or the bookshelves.
Well, and I've spent a lot of I've thought about that a lot, and I am nowhere near qualified to say to even stumble into a thought about what education is going to look like. So I'm going to be relatively mute in that subject, right? Because that's not my wheelhouse at all, and it'd be wrong for me to, assume that it is. But as we're having that conversation, if we are intent on adding to the structure, do we start looking at, on a parallel timeline, we can start with a box that's this big. Now what you do inside the box can be kind of worked into the conversation, but you still need to somewhere start with, you're going to have a box, right? And so do we start trying to pull a parallel course together, and maybe how you configure the inside of the box is where your flexibility comes from. But at the end of the day, a building is a building. It's
Going to have certain elements.
It's four walls, windows, plumbing and heating, and
So I think that vision of what a DCS education looks like comes from the discussion. And what is a realistic amount of time for you guys to pull together a couple of bullets of, we want a really flexible environment. Well, I mean, I don't want you to write a dissertation on it. Just like guiding principles for. We already have a lot of them. It's a super collaborative, community-focused environment that allows for an enormous amount of support through the grades and continuation in terms of transition with education between the different grades.
That sounds great. Kenny, did you get that?
Mm-hmm.
But like, like things like, we want to make sure that even if the middle school winds up with a separate identity, it doesn't wind up being a separate world. And even if just like that kind of stuff, I think can guide a lot of the building principles, because if the middle school is going to be over there, but you have a glass atrium or something in the middle that all of the kids can meet together. Things like big vision that we don't want to lose in the process.
Maybe there's a committee to be put together over the summer when people can think and not be under pressure, and stipends a few people that want to do think tank work.
I think along those lines, if we're looking for a think tank, I mean, part of that I think is what's going to help is going to have to generate ideas is going to be seeing things, right? And so seeing the video that Gigi shared with us last meeting was great, because I hadn't thought that way. But it's not until I see something like that now I can start thinking that way. So if you take that, and you extend it, then maybe the symposium that's coming up next month might be a good way to see ideas. But maybe another way to do that would be that there's plenty of districts within an hour drive that have been doing this and have been building schools over the last decade or 5 years, however far back we want to go. Maybe part of the summer or whenever it is involves going to actually just look at other new construction and new projects within an hour distance. So maybe it's kind of like finding those things, or maybe it's talking to, who is the woman who's coming in and helping us with the NELMS report? Lynn Healy, or somebody like that with NELMS or with NEASC, who sees a lot of schools and could refer us to schools that are forward-thinking within an hour drive or whatever. And so then maybe we could get in touch with other schools that currently are doing or are on a similar track, thinking the way that we're trying to think. And maybe that's how we get some ideas, perhaps.
So do you think coming back in August with that kind of pulling that together by August is realistic?
Or is that a subcommittee of the board that has administration and teachers and a board, rep? Or maybe it's not.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's us, because
Yeah.
I don't, well, it might be you, but I don't think it's me.
Right. I don't know.
Do we want to have a work group that wants to do that?
It's not a bad idea. I mean, if it involves traveling and seeing, getting ideas, I think that might be a fun thing
So
to
it
do.
can't be the board.
Maybe we can
Right.
talk about it after that June, that's June 6th, so at our second June meeting, we may
Sure.
have more information, we may learn, they're probably gonna talk about schools that have recently
Successfully.
been built or added onto, and
Although that symposium just seems like it's put on by a building group.
Yeah.
It's not a school group. It's
Right,
builders.
that's
So it's kind of a which
Here's what you can do.
yeah.
yeah.
This much
We have
money.
excavators, we can
So if we can gain information and it's free to attend them,
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
Absolutely.
I just
June 6th.
I just think I agree. You're going and visiting is a great way to inspire and get ideas, but I think it's equally important, if not more important, to see those spaces as solutions for what we want to do.
Right.
So if we come up with something, hey, we really want to see this, we would really like to do this. This new school was built incorporating a space to solve for that. Let's go take a look at it, see how they did it,
Right.
and see if those ideas can be applied here. But we need to have an idea of what that issue is first. I mean, it's a simple question, but I keep coming back. What would we do different?
It's not a simple question. That's the most
Yeah.
difficult question you're going to answer.
Right, because I think what
It's
happens in
simply
here,
said.
but I think what happens in the building isn't partly defined by the walls, and so it's part. I think Brian said it well last time, that the teachers here are willing to explore new ideas and try new things, and if they had a different space, they would be excited to try different things, and so.
But what's different in that? I guess what's different in that, like I have ideas, but they're mine. But I mean, what's different in that space to make it? I mean, are we trying to switch to more of a project-based learning where you need more collaborative space?
I guess my point is that we,
Like,
as a board, can't define that right now,
100%.
and I don't know that the teachers can define it right now either. I think
But
it takes a
collectively
process.
we can.
Yeah, I think together over the course of 6 months of looking and brainstorming and
Right.
whiteboarding and whatever else.
So when I said, give a time frame,
Yeah,
and I said August, that may not be realistic.
Right.
Maybe
I mean, yes,
October is realistic.
right.
but if you're going to go looking for engineering money for 2020,
Maybe we're not.
maybe we're not, and that's okay.
Right.
But what I'm saying, if you are,
Right.
then engineering money for 2020 needs to be on a
Yes.
warrant that's written in by January 9th-ish.
And
Yeah.
we better
So,
have some justification.
The other thing is that this isn't a linear path.
Mhm.
This is multi-threaded. We're going to have 5 different processes going on at the same time. And one of them is this collaborative vision and looking at all of the things and thinking at the super high level. Another one of them is the tangible calling the architects, getting the numbers, saying what does it actually cost. And there's probably going to be 5 or 6 other threads that are going to be added, and we're going to be progressing all of this at the same time. This is going to be a beast. So we're not going to go A to B and then B to C. We're going A, B, C, D, E to all of them at once.
Yeah.
Or it will take forever.
It's almost like a project management plan.
Right.
I'm not a professional project management plan person. And I'm wondering even if we need like a little consulting help on developing that project management plan. But I am thinking about planning backwards. So like, all right, we want a brick or mortar, or maybe not brick and mortar, but something building here. So if we want it by this date there, then we work backwards from that. And then usually I know what they, obviously they work with project management plan more than I have, but they have action steps and timelines the whole way but they usually are built backwards from the end game.
The way our board, so if we wanted to do this in just kind of like an agile approach, we already are structured in 4-week sprints. So agile is a methodology that it can be brought over from software engineering into stuff. And we can have tangibles. Here's our story. Here's what we want to deliver at the end of 4 weeks. How do we get there? And technically we should be on stand-ups between them, but now and then, but I have enough meetings in my life for that. There are some great tools and great methodologies that we can institute to do this. But so okay, just if we were going to game that out, 4 weeks from now we're gonna bite this to that. What do we want to have tackled by 4 weeks from now?
We will have been to the symposium by that point. Some of us. Who's going?
So there'll be a delivery report on the symposium.
Yeah.
There's the possibility that, well, no, that's much later in the summer. The Harvard one is much later in the summer.
Okay. Who are we sending somebody to that? Are we
Well,
going?
we're going to discuss that
It's
next.
on the agenda.
Okay.
What else do we want to have? We're going to have initial engineering numbers from what
We're going to have Pembroke's engineering numbers. I don't think it's fair to call them our initial
Right.
engineering numbers, but Pembroke's engineering numbers.
Right. What's our step? Do we have how have we progressed this story 4 weeks from now? We have some tentative numbers and we have some feedback in terms of experts. Is everybody kind of comfortable? That's where we want to be in 4 weeks from now?
Do we want before the teachers break for the summer? Do we want any thoughts on any interested teachers who would want to be involved in some sort of a planning thing? Do the teachers want to be involved in this or not? Do we want
I'm
to?
Could you ask the staff?
I have one already.
Okay.
Another one is trying to keep her summer from commitments, so.
That's fine. That's part of the job. So why don't we say in 4 weeks we will be as a committee, as a board, forming that work group. So anybody who's interested in playing 4 weeks from now should have said, I'm interested in playing. Does that sound okay?
Yeah. No, I just really want to ask this question. Does this mean we are committed to expanding the school?
Is there any?
And I don't mean physically, I don't mean an addition, I mean expanding the space. Are we setting our feet upon that path?
I think we are, from what I'm hearing tonight, is that we are setting our feet upon the path of having professionals advise us as to how much it will actually cost, what it would look like, and that will involve spending some money in order to get those answers that are accurate. Whether or not we ever get to the point of the finished product, that's another question. But at this point, I think, I feel like we should start gathering basic knowledge or professional knowledge through workshops, start thinking about engaging with people who do this as a profession, and asking for the money from the community next year for that.
So, if we're asking, to play it backwards, right? So if we're asking, realistically, it's in December, right? That we need to have our conversation about a warrant article. So if we're saying in December we want to be able to put a warrant article on the ballot for engineering dollars, we need to have that discussion about. We need to have results of an RFP at minimum for that middle of December, first meeting in January meeting. So it would be an RFP for
Architectural and engineering study for addition on communities.
So I mean, if you're working in that direction, right? So that means you're putting out an RFP, and that's one that really will take time for completion. You're putting an RFP out in October, middle of October, I'd say.
In the fall.
In the fall.
Is there anybody at this table who does not want to go down this path? Ken asked a good question. I mean, this is kind of where we're headed. Is there anybody who doesn't want it?
I have all the confidence in the world that we need more space. I have questions regarding the tax impact and the burden that places upon our community.
It will.
And that's where the practical side of me wants to go look at numbers. That's why I always want to drive the numbers into the equation, because that's what everybody, at the end of the day, the first thing people are going to go is, what's this going to cost me? And so,
I've never seen a proposal where people receiving the information said, that's great, that's exactly what we want, and we can afford that. You know, you're gonna come up with a vision, and you're gonna get the plans for it, and you're gonna get sticker shock and say, okay, that's what we want, but now what's reality and what can we afford?
there was,
I just don't think we know what we want yet. That's
I think that's Jim's right. There's
Oh yeah,
threads,
no,
they're all
I
gonna be
totally,
going on at the same time.
I totally agree.
so can we know enough about what we want by the middle of October to be able to put out an accurate RFP?
I think we can ask the questions.
We can try.
I think we can ask the questions by October. I don't, I think we can have a core of good questions that we can ask people who know what this is and what is involved. What does anybody else think?
And gauge input from the community in that time frame.
Right, well, we gotta start talking, engaging the community sooner than that. That's another one of the things that we need to involve ourselves in, is really reaching out and saying, hey, we're starting this discussion. We're gonna look at spending money on engineering and architectural renderings. What do you think? Here's why we need it. What do you think? Here's here's a range. I mean, it would be insanely hard to come up with a range of what the tax impact would look like.
No, I mean, I can estimate it in
Yeah, and you can say 5 to 10 million. You can say 3 to 12.
very easily. I mean, $200 a square foot, and we were talking about, here's where it gets scary. We were talking about approximately 70,000 square feet.
Yeah.
At $300.
Is that $21 million?
Sit down, that's not gonna fly in this town. I mean, so that's like, so the other half of this is if $21 million or whatever the number is, I'm looking at the camera, whatever, because I said a number, right, but whatever the number is, if it has no chance of flying, I don't necessarily want to go spend $300,000 doing engineering work or $400,000 doing engineering work,
Right.
because that's just throwing money away.
So a good question to ask the community is, what is maybe say, is a $3 to $7 million range somewhat palatable? Is a $7 to $10 million range somewhat palatable? Is it 10 to 13 or 10 to 15? Because I agree, 21 is, you gotta be kidding.
I don't think you can answer that question without having more information, though. I mean, somebody may say 3, but when they see what 7 gets them, they can get on board with that. Or
Right,
the
but there's
opposite.
gonna be an initial gut reaction.
Yeah.
And the other side of it is, if people can get on board, that also may mean that there's a multi-year vote process, which is very plausible anyway.
Absolutely.
I think it's
Where you come out with the $7 million plan and everybody's like, oh my God, no. And
Try
it
again.
dies.
Yeah.
And then you sell it for another year and you might get it through. So,
And you're talking, it's a 4 or 5 year process in the
right, so how do we reach out to the community in the next 4 weeks? Do we have any questions for them at this point, or is it too preliminary?
I think it's good to start. I think these conversations are good, and I think really recapping what these conversations are, and I think it's good for the community to know what we're thinking, and the community to know what our concerns are, because I'll be honest with you, we're all sitting here having the fun, there's 7 of us, but we're sitting here, we're having these thoughts, and it's the same thoughts that a lot of people in the community will be having anyway, so I think it's good for us to let them know that we're thinking of these things, and we're thinking of tax impacts. And I think at some point we need to really try to engage the community, say, at our next meeting, maybe at our next meeting we put it out there and say, we're really looking for community feedback, so please come, and let's set an hour aside and hope that people show up, and we can start hearing from people. And they can start saying things like, you guys are brilliant, this is wonderful. Or they can say, you're crazy, we can't afford it, our taxes can't go up anymore. We're going to get both sides of the spectrum regardless. Right? But we have to start that. And then surveys, and I mean, there's all these different mediums to hit. I mean, we can survey to the school stuff, but that gets us access to, you know, parents who are going to have a very different opinion than retirees who are going to have a different opinion than young families that are moving into town. And so, I mean, a survey with 200 respondents does not do a good job of giving us a cross-section of the community.
I'm not sure we're going to get much from that. I don't think having 5 people
No.
come in here and tell us what they think is going to get us a $21 million building.
I do remember when we said high school and we filled the cafeteria.
Sure.
So that's the response I want, you know. So maybe we say high school. We fill the cafeteria and say, hey,
We're gonna build a
Just
high
kidding.
school.
while you're here,
But what do they tell us? I mean, do you feel like parents or retirees know more about where education is going to be in 5 years than we do or than our administration does? Or our teachers do?
No, I think his objective is to get a sense of what dollar amount would be palatable. I agree with you. We need more input on what that education vision should include. What skills should we be teaching? You know, study skills. Whatever it turns out to be that we can incorporate in our curriculum, and then.
I feel like maybe a slightly different game plan for the fall, if we are going to try to put something on the warrant, would be more trying to make a video somehow. Maybe we could even enlist, like groups of students in or something to do this. But like what we saw, I think is pretty cool to sell what they already did. That was more retroactive, but and obviously a video has to be to some extent because it's what you can only film what's already happened. But we've made some changes over the last couple of years. We've started to wrestle with this idea of how education is changing currently. We can't quite predict where it's going to be, but we could start to put some sort of a presentation together in a video format or something like that explores the way that education is changing. That yes, we're seeing test scores because there are going to be people in the community who want to see the test scores changing, and so we can show we can start selling this by starting to put together some sort of a thing that we would end up sharing or promoting somehow through a series of meetings in the fall to lead up to tours of the building. We can do that kind of stuff that then leads to something in December where we put something on the ballot.
We have to keep in mind that what we can do is explain why we need space.
Right.
We cannot sell space.
Right. Okay.
We cannot leverage
I guess
any of our platforms to sell the idea.
Right.
But
we do need to get our message out there.
Yeah,
I guess that's when I say that, that's what I mean. I know that we
need to
can't.
explain why there's such pressure.
Right.
So, for the next 4 weeks, is there anything we need to do to reach out to the community?
I think it's too early to reach out to the community. I don't think it's going to accomplish anything.
Okay. So,
I just wanted to talk about, to agree with Nate, and I didn't know if you already had that, like, just because I know you've been talking space for a while, but it seems like you have to really clearly and as specifically as possible outline what this retrofitted building is not, how it's not serving
Right.
21st century education, and lay that out. Like, we're shoving a makerspace into the corner of the library. That's problematic, right? And really kind of list those things out, and get them very clear, because I think when you can show the programmatic and educational impact of not having enough space to do things, that then helps to get people thinking about what might be the solutions to that.
It's going to flip things because 2 years ago for NEASC or for the Eddie's Award, I recall a video that the students put together that was great. That was how excellent our program is, and that was fun to see. And I remember, I think it was kind of crammed into like the conference room downstairs next to the office. But now we've got to make a totally different video that says we're not doing what we're trying to do because of our space. So it's like it's sending a different message, but at the same time, I don't know. So
I think the STEM lab is innovative, and we are keeping up, and it's great. But like you said, to make that happen, this is what we're doing.
Right.
We're making it happen, and we're doing great things here, but
It's a balancing act.
Yes.
And we need your help.
It's a building full of offices.
Offices. All right, anything else on the work session tonight? I feel like we're somewhat talking in a circle.
What we do best.
Okay. Informational items.
So we just touched a little bit on the symposium on June 6th, and it's free. I have confirmation so Kristen's going, I'm going, Nate's going for sure. If anyone else wants to join, I'd like to sign us up in the next day or so. You can get back to me on whether you're interested.
What's the date again?
6th, and it's
Yeah,
at,
consequence gratification.
it's 2:30 to 7.
She said something different. I'm like,
No, June 6th. And then the second opportunity that we've that Kristen actually found, but we need to have a conversation because it's pretty costly. July 30th there to August 1st, there's Harvard is putting on something called Learning Environments for Tomorrow, Next Practices for Educators and Architects. It's recommended that you bring a team. It is, I think, approximately $3,000 per person, and that's with 2,000. Oh, sorry.
But there's an early bird special.
It's $5 off.
No, it's several $100s
And a
if
hand
you
sandwich.
register by June.
How many people
That
would
does
you?
not include travel expenses, hotel. It's very expensive.
But it does look amazing.
Do they have any, like, scholarships for rural communities?
I think
They talked about assistance.
How many people would
Financial aid.
you want to bring down? for
That's for the board to consider. If you even want to send anybody.
I have a commitment from a staff member.
Who would go?
Who would go. She isn't 100% committed, but
To the Harvard
yeah.
conference.
July 30th.
Items, teams of 3 to 6 are preferred, but individuals would be welcomed.
That sounds more like it is not as much brick and mortar, but is more of what you're going to do inside the brick and mortar.
Right, the big question.
Architects.
I would want to see administration go to that. If it's the kind of thing that I would want to see the decision makers at that kind of a conference.
Featured speaker is Roseanne Bosch, the founder and creative
Roseanne
director
Barr.
of what?
What was that part?
I thought you were going to say Roseanne Barr. I thought you were going to say.
Should give an opinion.
She's internationally renowned for her designs and inspiring perspectives on learning spaces for the future. She has a book, Designing for a Better World Starts at School.
Can we just buy the book?
I think we should do that anyway.
Certainly could.
Amazon.
It's getting late.
So it's absolutely at your discretion. It's
So I would. I mean, is 3 people is 3 people a good number to send?
At the most.
Okay, so I move to approve.
Oh my goodness.
The 3. The
Up to 3.
up to 3.
Discussion.
It's a lot of money.
I think it's totally in line with the discussion that we're having currently. I think
Maybe a line
it's extremely, I think it would be beneficial to get that kind of perspective. And
We
bring
stall a
it
lot on
back.
that question.
Who is the staff member who's interested in going? Do you have time to go? And I'm not
I
putting
put
you
it on my calendar.
Do you have time to go?
It conflicts with the responsive classroom, but it's take precedence.
Yeah, if we do this, we have to have Kristen.
Yeah, I'd rather send a team to responsive classroom and get them, because I know that there's teacher leaders that can move that forward without me. I know enough about it, so I can move forward without having to go to the workshop.
Which one would you send Brian to?
The one in Aruba.
I think Brian.
If you're
I
only-
know, but if you had your choice, I mean, if you and Brian go to Harvard, which would be ideal, but do you have enough faith in your teacher leadership to send them to the responsive classroom without administrative leadership?
I like the divide and conquer approach.
I'm discussing strategy. I don't have an opinion.
I want Patty there.
If you're only sending 3 and it's one staff member, your principal, if you want me to go, then Brian doesn't go. If you want Brian to go, then I don't go. That's
She goes.
your fault.
Yeah, Brian would be better at responsive classroom.
Yeah.
because-
And that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
Divide and conquer.
Have fun at Harvard.
Yeah.
Your motion was for 6,000?
Yeah.
The motion was
For three individuals.
Oh,
She
but
does
so then there's,
travel.
right, so you're gonna stay down there, they're gonna drive back and forth each day.
Right.
Okay. Okay. You didn't set a limit on the price? We'll just, no? Open bar tab and all that?
I have all the faith that won't be
That won't be an issue.
Okay,
Well, we can have this discussion later.
okay.
So we have a motion for 3 people to go to the Harvard
thing.
thing. Any additional discussion?
Did someone second?
Karen?
He didn't even finish his sentence before I seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstains? Gigi?
I'm there, I'm with you.
All right.
Get it into NLP tomorrow.
I'll register us because I think we're probably gonna need a credit card to do it, and I don't mind doing that on my
Your
own.
name is James.
Oh, good to know.
Can you?
You
Didn't
know.
know that.
Can you put it on?
I have an informational before we move on,
Yes,
if
go
that's
ahead.
possible. I would like to give a shout out to the middle school teachers because I went to curriculum night, and I don't think I went last year, but 2 years ago I went, and I was confused, and I didn't. This is 2 years ago, and I think it was the first time that it happened. I think, and I went to go see what it was, and I just didn't feel like there was a clear plan or message 2 years ago. But I thought curriculum night for the middle school this past week was great, and there was a clear mission, and I was trying to keep up with my daughter as she went to all these different tables and introduced me to different projects and teachers, and it was great to see that slice of the middle school and to see a lot of great things that they've been working on. So thank you for good curriculum night. Very cool.
Awesome.
So proud of them.
Yes.
I got more. Your 1920 meeting schedule has been drafted, put in the drive. I just want to make sure that we're all set for Wednesday, July 17th, 8 a.m. for board goals and breakfast. And there's another place, they reopened again,
It's
you said?
great. If you haven't been there.
Oh,
No, I haven't. Is it?
Maz is great. We've already gone a couple times.
Is it the Mastermind place out of Northwood?
It was Maz from Northwood, but yes, it's great. Lovely little place. Lovely woman that owns it is
We can
wonderful.
still move tables around like we've done in the past?
We
Set up
called
same table.
we
Same
called and
thing?
asked in the past.
Yeah.
Just to-
Yeah.
Yes,
All right, and then we've stuck to the same meeting schedule. I need to know if that's your intention again for next year, is to meet twice a month. That's how we've structured it.
with this building thing, I don't think we can get away from it.
Okay, so I'm gonna go with this.
Yep.
All right,
That's good.
let Kathy know.
Maz might not be open. She's got some pretty strict hours, doesn't she?
Oh, she does?
She's
Yeah.
breakfast and lunch. It's not dinner.
But every day?
I thought Monday was the day she was closed.
Okay.
Usually Mondays, people
Yeah.
are
Could
closed
you
on
ask her?
Mondays.
Yes, Mom.
I'll probably see her this week.
Talk to Mom.
I'll talk to her. I'll buy 2 breakfasts.
Okay, and then the second issue is your June, or the second scheduling topic is your June meeting. that is the last day of school and a little celebration for our retirees. So, don't know what your schedules all look like. Is there anything,
Which meeting was that?
the June 19th meeting?
So the last day of
The
school.
second
Oh,
meeting?
yeah.
Is there anything scheduled at school on Tuesday night, Kristen? The 18th?
Graduation.
Just that?
Whatever, it's fine.
We're all gonna be here.
Yeah, yeah, I did have that.
And Monday the 17th, there's nothing. Thursday the 20th, there's nothing.
We could go Monday. Everybody's gonna wanna take off.
Yeah,
The
it's
day
gotta be
after.
done, yeah. Is
You
that
guys wanna
okay?
go Monday?
On the
Sure.
17th?
Monday the 17th.
Can you do that? June.
Looks like it.
I'm not very excited.
I could go to New Jersey and something.
That's not very exciting.
That's on video.
I think that was it for informational.
You said Tuesday's graduation the 18th.
Yes.
Is that like 6 p.m. or when is that? 7, 5? What time is graduation?
It says 6:30 on my phone.
6:30. Thank you.
I thought it was earlier than that last year. No?
It just goes until 7:30.
Tonight. It's like a board meeting.
It is like a board meeting.
Very thorough.
Yes. Any additional information lines?
I'm sorry, the 19th is the last day of school, DCS.
Yeah.
All right. Per NHRSA 91A and C, colon 3, 2, I would entertain a motion to go into non-public.
So moved.
Second. Nate?
Yes.
Ken?
Yep.
Zach?
Yes.
Jim, yes. Yep. Gigi, yes. At 8:56, we're in non-public. Alright, we are out of non-public at 9:33.
I'd like to make a motion to seal the minutes of the non-public session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anything else tonight?
Yep.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're done.